17-year-old Brycey Bassey and her mother Carletta are suing Tatum Hood for damage to their vehicle. Brycey says she was picking up her sister from school when Tatum hit her car.
Quiet in the courtroom, please. All rise. Now, this is case number 137 on the calendar in the matter of Bassey versus Hood. Parties have been sworn in. You may be seated. Have a seat.
Who was driving? You weren't there?
No.
You're her mom?
Yes, I'm her mother.
She looks like she can take care of herself. If she can't, you can't help her because you weren't there.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Bassey, according to your complaint, you and the defendant got into sort of an altercation. You were going to pick up
my little sister.
Your sister in school, and you were going to pick up
my son.
Your son. And as a result of that, it is your claim that the defendant damaged your car. The defendant says that your poor driving was the result of the damage to your car, and you actually ran into her car. That's your defense.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Pull that a little bit closer to me so that I can see it a little bit better up here, Bird. Miss Bassey, you're the red car.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Go over and put your finger over there, please. That's where you were coming from, and you were making a left turn into the parking lot?
Yes, ma'am.
And the defendant was coming straight.
She was coming straight, and she didn't have a signal on. She was like right here where the curb is, where the driveway ends, and then she decides all of a sudden oh, I need to turn. And so when she turns, she comes.
Shh, don't speak.
She comes and she turns so close to the curb, and I'm about to turn thinking she's about to pass by, so I stop to prevent from hitting her because it's a very congested area. And she turns in, and then I turn in after her.
Well, so far you understand she had the right of way.
Yes, ma'am.
You did not. So, okay, and what happened next?
I honked at her.
Why?
Well, because I honked at her because she didn't use her signal.
Well, that's not a nice thing to do, Miss Bassey. That's not an appropriate thing to do. She had the right of way. So right there, you were wrong. You had no right to honk at her because she had the right of way. Whether you think she had a signal on or not, she says she did. It doesn't make any difference. In a congested road, and you're going across 2 lanes of traffic coming from the opposite direction, and she is on the side of the road where she could make a right turn into that spot, she's got the right of way. So, A, that's one for her team. You had no right to honk the horn. So what happened after you honked the horn?
We pull up into the driveway area. We're right here where you pick up all the kids. And I honked twice to get my little sister's attention. When I honked twice, she thought I was honking at her.
Again?
Yes, she thought I was honking at her again.
Well, now let me ask you this question. How many kids are outside?
A lot.
What do you think it would be like, Miss Bassey, if everybody honked their horn a couple of times to get their little sister's attention?
Well, yeah,
is there something wrong with your legs?
Well, no, she wasn't that.
Just listen. Was there something wrong with your legs?
There was nothing wrong with my legs.
Then if there's nothing wrong with your legs, you stop the car and you get out of the car and you say to your little sister, here I am. You don't sit in your car and honk the horn. We're going to go step by step. I haven't gotten to her yet because I have a feeling you didn't behave reasonably either because I read your answer.
No, ma'am.
And it's amazing to me that 2 women, usually it's the guys that get into these jock wars, but 2 women behaving badly? How old are you?
17.
Well, you better go back to driving school and etiquette school, because so far you're not #1 on my hit parade today. So you honked your horn for your sister, and the defendant thought you were again honking at her. That's what you assumed. So what did she do?
She flips me off and starts waving her fist behind me. She turns around and she just starts doing the little hand things and yelling.
Not a nice thing. Just a second. Not a nice thing to do.
You're right.
Okay. So she gestures to you in an obscene gesture. What happens next?
I looked at her and I threw my hands up like trying to say, no, I was not honking at you. And, she's still yelling, and I was yelling back at her. I'm like, look, I'm not trying to
So now you're yelling at each other?
Yes.
Good. Go ahead.
And then after that, my little sister does see me, and she comes to the side of the car. And the defendant is still very angry that I had honked at her. And, we were still arguing with each other. And so at this time, I was trying to move. I had my little sister in the car. I wanted to get out of there. It's very busy. She doesn't move.
Well, where's your car?
Right here.
So you're behind her?
Mm-hmm. So she pulls up a little bit, we pull up, and then, she's still mad. And I honked at her again. I'm like, can you please move?
All right, so why are you honking?
She wouldn't move.
Why does she have to move?
She could have moved, but
Now, why does she have to move?
Well, her son had already gotten to the car.
Look, I'm looking at your car, and I'm seeing what you did. So you pulled out, according to you, you pulled out because she's not moving. And you pulled around her.
Yes, after she did it, but no, I got out the car. I even got out the car and said, will you please move? Is she still cussing me out?
Can I ask you a question? Why, Miss Bassie? What? Stop it.
Yes, ma'am.
Why are you still arguing with her and imploring her to move when all you had to do was drive around her?
At the time, there was still cars going. There's a lot of cars still going through. And then when she was free, she wouldn't move. I was behind her to a place where I couldn't really squeeze around her this way or squeeze around her this way, but I managed.
Because everybody's picking up their children.
Yes.
Keep going.
Then I did manage to, because my car is small enough, so I'm like, okay, maybe I can squeeze around her. I was able to squeeze around her, and I drove all the way to over here to the drive area. Then she comes all the way, she drives over here, rolls down her window and said, is this the way black people act? And I'm like, what was that supposed? I looked at her kids in the car, and they appeared to be biracial to me. And then I looked at her again, I'm like, what was that supposed to mean?
Okay.
And at this time, yes, I mean, we were cussing each other out. She then says, do you want to fight? And I'm like, do I want to what? And my little sister gets out of the car.
What'd she get out of the car for?
She got out she's like, do you want to fight? And my little sister's like, what do you want to, she's like, what do you want to fight for?
Where's the little sister? Step up here. Move over there. What did you get out of the car for?
Because at that time, Mrs. Hood had opened her door like she was going to get out, so I'm like...
Sounds like a perfect reason for you to stay in your car. If somebody, according to you and according to your sister, is acting like a lunatic and says, do you want to fight? Doesn't sound like the kind of situation you want to say, sure. Now, what's your first name?
LaQuise.
LaQuise, genius. What did you do when you got out of the car?
Well, I got out of the car because, you know, by that time I was really mad. And so I guess I wasn't thinking. I got out the car and then, you know, I kind of went over to her car and then...
So you kind of went over to her
yeah,
car. What does that mean? That means you went over to her car?
I walked over to her car.
What?
I walked over to her car.
And what did you say when you walked over to her car?
I really didn't say anything. I was waiting on her. She said she was going to get out and fight. And I'm like, is
and that's
serious?
what you were waiting to do. You got out of the car to fight her.
I mean, I was going to see if she was
Miss Bassie back there, you should be very proud of them so far. Are you following me?
I am.
Right? So far, I'm looking at your mother and I'm looking at you two, and I got news for you. I don't think that your mother would have reacted the same way that day that you did. Right, Miss Bassie?
Yes.
Thank you.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
When people behave badly and they have no defense for their bad behavior, they infuse racism to try to inflame the fact finder. Listen to me. It doesn't.
Tatum claims Brycey and her sister threatened her life.
Okay, so after you got out of the car and walked over to Miss Hood's car because she said she wanted to fight, I assume at some point you got back into the car.
I walked over back to my sister's car, but because, you know, she was about to turn right by then. But then Mrs. Hood hits my sister's car, and I was shocked. I had no time to get back in the car because that's when she turned.
Well, just a minute. Your sister is making a turn from the wrong lane.
No. This is to go right. I went left after she had to hit my car. I was not even moving when she hit my car. She hit my car on purpose.
You mean she plowed into your car, you were standing still?
Yes, my car was not in motion.
Okay. And you have photographs of this car?
Yes, I do.
I'd like to see it. Oh, that's a lot of damage. All right, Miss Hood, ball's in your court.
It was January 19th, 2005. May I go over here? I went to the school to pick up my son that's here. I'm the blue car here. I'm coming down Tyler Road. I believe it would be south. She's coming north. She is right here. As she said, it's very congested. There's lots of cars. If she would have been, like on her chart, over here already turning, there was tons of cars coming. I did have my blinker on.
Listen to me. She was wrong. I already said she was wrong.
Okay. So we turn in. When we turn in at Wilbur, there's also, there's like 2 lanes like this. I stay in this lane. We never got over here because to get over here, you have to stop up against the school and there's buses and handicap parking. I stayed in this lane. As I was turning, she started calling me all out of my name. She called me a white bee. Go back to driver's ed, learn how to drive. I'm going to kick your butt. As we stopped, I stopped here. She was behind me. She honked. I thought she was honking at me. Stupidly, I flipped her off. I never shook my fist at her, nothing else. She got out of her car at that point in time, come up, beating on my window, was screaming, I'm going to kick your butt, but she was not saying butt. Get out of your truck, you white bee this, white bee that. I rolled down my window. I said, you need to go get back in your car before you embarrass yourself. She went back into her car. We both proceeded to go. She spun around me. She's still screaming. I'm saying some stuff. We get like we're right here, and she is calling me all out of my name, still profanity, racial slurs. I am married to a black man. I am not racist. I rolled down my window. I said, you are giving young black women a bad name. You should not act like that. I would never allow my daughter to act like that, or my son. She's like still using profanity, still cussing, and she's like, pull over her. By this time, the other sister was screaming at me too. Pull over, we're gonna whip your butt, blah, blah, blah. She starts to go. I take off. Bam, I hit her. She's barely like this. They're gonna pull over. They're trying to cut me off. Two fights. She never got out of the car. I hit her. When I hit her, we stopped. I probably stopped for 30 seconds. I'm not going to lie. Both of them at that time got out of the car. She was never out of the car till after I hit her. And then they were screaming, we're going to kill you, you stupid white bee, blah, 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 calling me racial. I can't believe it has turned into a racial thing. It's so sickening. And then...
No, it's not. It's not. Listen to me, Miss Hood. It's not racial here. It's not racial in this courtroom.
You're right.
Sometimes when people behave badly and they have no defense for their bad behavior, they infuse racism to try to inflame the fact finder. Listen to me. It doesn't work. Go ahead.
Afterwards, I leave because I don't know what they're going to do. Brycey then jumps back in the car with the younger sister that she picked up, who's in the back seat, chasing us. I'm stopping at stop signs, stopping at stoplights. Each time we stop, she's getting out of the car, trying to come up to the window, still screaming. When we see two cop cars coming, I pull into a parking lot. She pulls in. When she pulls in, she stops. She gets out of her car. I'm going to mollywop you. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to beat you up.
May I please see the police report?
Yes, ma'am.
And then
I want to see the police report.
The cops that pull up are telling her to get back in her car. They restrain her. I'm sorry.
I want to read the police report. You told the police you got out of the car.
My sister got out of the car.
Brycey, you signed the statement. You said, before that, I got out of the car and asked what the problem. And one continued to yell at me.
When I got out the car, that's way before, whenever we were still in the school area.
You didn't tell me that you got out of the car.
I did. I said I got out of the car and asked her to move.
No, you told the police you got out of the car and asked her what her problem was.
Yeah, I asked her what the problem is. Can you please move? I was not honking at you.
Did you do the wrong thing that day?
Yes, I did.
How much of this accident was your fault?
I would probably say, I don't know. I'm not going to say that it was the least of my fault. No, it was not. I shouldn't have honked at her. You know, that's the one thing. I shouldn't have honked at her. And then when I honked twice, I probably should have yelled for my sister. Or, you know, then after I got out the car, you know, instead I should have probably just sat there and waited for her to move.
Yes, you want to say something?
For what it's worth, I just want to say that I did speak with Mrs. Hood regarding this accident 2 days later. I went over to Mrs. Hood's home because I got the police report. I didn't have insurance. I was going to file the insurance and I needed to know where she lived. The police did give us her address. And I went. She was very polite. I didn't have a problem with her. Mrs. Hood told me she was having a bad day that day. She said she was in an argument with her husband's nieces, and you know she was upset, and she was already tensed up and upset. And she did tell me she intentionally hit my daughter's car. She never denied hitting her car, but she also proceeded.
She said, just a second. Are you telling me, Miss Bassey, that Miss Hood said I intentionally hit her car?
Yes, she did. Those were her exact words to me. Yes.
Interesting. Is that what you said to her?
I said I hit her daughter's car. I never intentionally hit it. She was coming this way to cut me off. I did hit Brycey's car. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't hit it.
No, I know you did. I have the pictures to prove that you did. I'm just surprised that Miss Bassey is telling me that you used the word intentionally. I mean, I can't imagine anybody intentionally hitting somebody else's car.
Oh, That's what she told my daughter and myself. And she also told me she left the scene of the accident. I don't agree with Brycey chasing her. She said she left the scene of the accident not because she was afraid of my daughter.
Not just chasing her, Miss Bassey.
She left because she said she was unlawfully driving her truck.
Listen to me. I got it. I don't believe this story. I believe that what your daughter did was pull out, speed around her, and I believe that when she pulled out and sped around her, Miss Hood caught up with her.
No, I don't believe that, Your Honor.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Because Brycey wasn't moving when she hit her.
No. Listen to me. I said Miss Hood caught up with her. She pulled around her fast in a school pickup zone. That's what your daughter did. She had an attention span and a fuse that was about this short. And she created a situation in there because she's got a hot temper and she wasn't behaving like a mature driver. Neither was this one. But she's not the plaintiff. She is. So you had, according to your complaint, $4,000 worth of damage to your car with no insurance.
No.
And all I'm asking...
She had insurance.
Insurance.
Yes, we had insurance.
Oh, good. So how much did the insurance pay?
We didn't want to file the insurance.
No.
Well, you better.
Insurance does not take care of damages that have intentionally been done
That's
to
what
the
they
car.
said.
Well, listen to me very carefully. I would file with my insurance carrier if I were you. Ordinarily, if this was solely her fault, I would say, well, why should you file with your insurance? Because that means your premiums are going to go up.
Yes, which they would have.
You're absolutely right. They would have, because she's a 17-year-old driver who was involved in an accident. But this accident was partially her fault. So I think you ought to file with your insurance company. Now, what kind of deductible do you have?
$500.
Good. Ms. Hood's going to pay that. But you file with your insurance company. This accident was partially your fault, and that's what you have insurance for.
Even though Mrs. Hood agreed to fix her car, she agreed to fix it.
Listen to me. Then you don't come to court, Miss Bassey. Then you don't come to court. But if you come here and you're asking a fact finder to make a determination of what the right thing to do is, in this case, the right thing to do is because your daughter was at least 50% responsible for what went on that day because she did the wrong thing. She may have caught her on a bad day. That's the way sometimes you catch people. What? She was not in a hurry to go to a summit meeting. So she waits her turn, and she takes an extra couple of minutes, and her sister doesn't get out of the car in an aggressive stance. She's not picking up her baby sister, who's 3 years old. Your other daughter looks like she can well take care of herself, and she's got an attitude. So that's what you have insurance for. Miss Hood has to accept some responsibility for what she did, and she's going to cover your deductible. Put it into your insurance. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $500. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may. Yeah, this is case number 15 on the calendar in the matter of Miller versus Welch. Parties have been sworn in. You may be seated. Have a seat, ma'am.
Mr. Miller, it is your claim that the defendant, who was living in your home, along with her mother and her child, filed false charges against you for domestic violence. You want to be compensated with the return of your bail and some additional amount of money to compensate you for what you went through. The defendant says that she filed for a protective order because the ultimate reason was you called her 3-year-old some bad names, right?
Yes.
How did she come to be in your house?
Ma'am, Jessica Welch and I had a relationship. Our relationship started the ending of September, beginning of October. She moved in, ma'am.
Why did she move in?
We had a relationship. I was physically attracted to her. We talked a lot, had a lot of things in common, ma'am. My wife moved out.
When did your wife move out?
About the end of September.
Okay, so your wife moved out in September. You began a relationship with the defendant, and when did she move in?
Beginning of October, ma'am.
Don't like to be alone?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Miller?
No, ma'am.
Are you living alone now?
No, ma'am. I'm back with my wife, and we're working things through.
Good. You still didn't tell me why she moved in.
She was living with her stepfather, ma'am, and I guess her stepfather was doing a lot of yelling. It was a bad environment for her son, CJ.
So that's why you allowed her to move into your house, plus the fact that you liked her.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that right so far, Miss Welch?
Yes.
You had been living previously with your mother?
My mother and stepfather, yes.
And they weren't getting along?
No.
Do you work?
Yes, I do.
Did you work then?
Yes.
What kind of work did you do?
I'm a clerk at a convenience store.
Full-time, part-time?
Full-time.
And your mother?
She works for a big satellite company.
Tell me about why you filed for a protective order against him.
There was an argument that Chris and I had.
When?
Right before Thanksgiving. It's the end of November.
Okay.
He had been drinking. He had argued with his wife on the telephone. He was promising to take her out for their anniversary, and being as they were separated, I didn't agree with that. We got into an argument about it. As I turned to walk away, he came after me. He ran after me and grabbed me and knocked me down to the floor.
Shh. Mr. Miller, I know you want to respond. You're going to have an opportunity to do that. Came from behind you.
He grabbed me from behind and knocked me down to the floor. I ended up went into the bathroom to cry because...
Well, what happened after he knocked you down to the floor?
After he knocked me down to the floor, he went back into the kitchen because my mother got into the middle of it. My mother watched and she separated us.
Were you arguing with each other?
Yes, we were.
Were you physical with him?
No, I wasn't. I turned and walked away from him.
Did you say anything to him?
No, I was like, I'm done. I just turned and walked away.
Okay. That was in November?
Yes. And then later that evening, we went to bed. I was putting blankets and pillows in between us so that we didn't touch while we were sleeping. And he leaned over and bit me on the left breast.
And where did you sleep that night?
I ended up sleeping on the floor that night.
And the night after?
The night after was back in the bed with him.
Well, what happened the next day?
The next day, he said he didn't remember. He had been drinking a lot. I tried to tell him what happened. He just blew me off and ignored me. He just did not remember.
Well, that's November. Did you stay together in December?
No. Monday after the incident occurred, I got a restraining order. And
you got a restraining order when?
I got a restraining order the end of November.
I'd like to see it, please. Now, one of my questions to you is, you moved into his home.
Yes.
You, in effect, had him kicked out of his own house. Why didn't you and your mother and your kid leave?
At that time, we didn't have any money because we paid off the rest of his deposit when he invited us to move in, and he added our names to the lease.
Mr. Miller, you
Yes, ma'am.
added her name to the lease?
Yes, I did, ma'am.
That was very stupid.
Yes, it was, ma'am.
What was that Forrest Gump line, Bird? Stupid is as stupid does?
That's the one.
Right. Okay. Now, he wasn't arrested on this domestic violence charge. He was arrested for outstanding warrants that he had when you filed the complaint. What kind of warrants did you have, Mr. Miller?
Misdemeanor, ma'am. They were being intoxicated in public and in public.
You didn't learn not to drink, Mr. Miller?
Yes, ma'am. I go to classes now. Yes.
Should have gone to classes back in November.
I was doing that, actually.
Not successfully?
No, ma'am.
Okay. This case was ultimately dismissed.
Yes, ma'am.
Assault case was, yes.
How come, Miss Welch?
But because pretty much he got my boss, my ex-boss and old co-worker to lie for him.
You mean this case was tried?
Wasn't tried after the prosecuting attorney talked to the witnesses he had. She didn't feel that it was necessary to move forward because if we went to jury, we wouldn't have got anywhere because it was an attack on my character.
But this is the case on which you base your complaint. Is that right, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Because she had you arrested not at the time of this incident before Thanksgiving, but she waited. Isn't that right, Miss Welch? Because when you called the police because he said bad things to your son. You had not gone to the police with regard to this incident where he pushed you and bit you, according to you. You did not go to the police until, according to you, he said some things to your son that you didn't like, and then you decided to go to the police and report the domestic violence. Isn't that what I read?
That's pretty much what you read, because if he's calling my son names...
Exactly. I just answered my question, my dear. It wasn't until after he called your son a name that you went to the police and complained about this incident that had happened days before. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now tell me about the incident involving your son.
We were sitting there. He'd been drinking the whole day again. My son was playing, and he called him stupid, called him retarded. And I know if he's calling my son names, he's going to hit my son next. He hit me. It ain't going to happen. Nobody's going to touch my son.
Well, he didn't touch him, did he?
No, he didn't. But if he has the audacity to call my son stupid and retarded, This is also the same man that has the audacity to assault a woman. He has the audacity to assault a child, too.
Why didn't you move?
I had nowhere to go. I don't have family in Idaho.
Well, listen to me. You know this man for a couple of months. This man isn't your life. You're there with your mother. Go to a shelter. I mean, why are you staying there? This isn't your husband. You don't have a child together. You don't have a life together. He had a house. You needed a place to stay. Mr. Miller says that you moved a friend into the house. Is that true?
No, I did not.
Did you have a friend come to stay with you for a period of time, Miss Welch?
I had...
Just look at me. Don't look at him. Look at me.
I had a friend stay for a couple of weeks.
And the friend's name?
His name is Tony.
Tony what? And how long do you know Tony?
I'd known him before Chris. I'd known him for about 5 months.
Where did you know him from?
From the same place I met Chris, work.
And why did you invite him to stay at a house?
He had just gotten out of jail. He came, he came and he needed a place to stay, so I let him stay.
Was Mr. Miller in agreement with that?
He said that first night that Tony stayed that yes, he was in agreement with it.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Ma'am, she moved Tony in. I was not aware it was her ex-boyfriend.
Look at me. Don't look at her.
Sorry, ma'am. Sorry. Apologize. Ma'am, it was her ex-boyfriend. He came on the 12th, on Friday, when this assault supposedly was supposed to happen, ma'am. On the 14th, I came to her and asked, why is he still there? She told me he got a job, he will be moving out. On the 14th, that's when the cops came to arrest me, ma'am. When I was arrested, she got a restraining order as soon as I left the jail. I bailed out, ma'am. I was no longer welcome back in my home.
Where was Tony?
Living there, man, in my bedroom. And I do have a letter saying that...
Don't tell me a letter. I don't do letter.
Okay, ma'am, it's a letter from her to Tony. Sorry.
Oh, a letter from her?
To Tony.
That I'll see. Show this to the defendant, would you? What date did you write that?
It was February of this year.
Where were you living?
I was living in the house where I'm still currently residing, where Mr. Miller moved out of.
So you're still there?
Yes.
Can I have that note back, please? How come you're still there?
My mom and I are trying to save up enough money to find a new place to live. It's kind of hard. We're having a little trouble getting the money up.
So Tony's
sort
of helping you?
No, Tony's no longer around.
When did he leave?
Tony left, it had to be March this year. He wasn't living in the house. He had his own place, and I was going to move in with him, but I found out he's been hanging out with Mr. Miller, so I decided that was not the best.
You have a 3-year-old child?
Yes.
Why don't you grow up? Why don't you grow up?
I'm working on that.
You're not working hard enough. You keep picking losers, that's your business. If Mr. Miller is honest with himself, and right now he is probably clean and sober, he knows that he's not a winner. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Miller?
Yes, that is a very fair statement, ma'am.
And clearly Tony, who just got released from prison and needed a place to stay, is also not a winner. And you and your mother, who didn't have a place to stay, 2 adult women with jobs, who couldn't find a safe place to stay for their 3-year-old son and grandson, clearly are not winners. You better grow up.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. And later today...
After 72 hours, it's not toxic.
Well, did your bird die within 72 hours?
It died immediately of him standing the process.
Well, then what I'm telling you, madam, is you should have taken your animals out of the house.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Christopher Miller says ex-girlfriend Jessica Welch took out a false restraining order against him. Jessica claims Christopher physically abused her and verbally abused her young son.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, ma'am.
You probably don't remember what happened the night in November when things got a little tacky with Miss Welch. There isn't a question in my mind that she used you. There is also not a question in my mind that the reason you called the police, Miss Welch, is that you wanted him out of the house so that Tony could be there unencumbered Not that he called your son stupid, but that he had already told you. Tony was going. And Tony didn't go. Tony stayed, according to you, for 2 weeks after he was out of the house. At least 2 weeks. So I think you had an ulterior motive for calling the police on him and having him arrested and having him removed from his house. Mr. Miller, I think that your conduct in getting sloshed and not acting appropriately didn't help things. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
But I don't think that Miss Welch filed for a protective order because she was legitimately afraid of you, which is the only reason that you filed for a protective order. Not for another reason, not because you want an apartment, you want a house, you want him out so that you could bring another boyfriend. And those aren't legitimate reasons for filing for a protective order, because you've sworn in your application for a protective order that you are in fear. And you weren't in fear. You were only in fear if the two men stayed in the house with you at the same time. So, Mr. Miller, I think that you behaved probably a little bit badly, but certainly that was not the reason that you called the police. Judgment for the plaintiff for the amount of bail, $1,000. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Her boss, her co-worker, and her ex-boyfriend was on my side, too.
He wins again.
Even the good guys win at times.
I have a good heart and I'm a good person.
Judge Judy's the bomb.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Lubbock versus Nunez, step forward, please.
Real estate agent Donna Lubbock is suing business owner Jack Nunez for the cost to replace 3 parrots. Donna says the birds died after Jack sanded her floors.
Miss Lubbock, how old are you?
35.
What do you do for a living?
I sell real estate.
How long have you been a real estate agent?
Almost 4 years.
Do you have any college degrees behind you?
No degrees, but I have 2 years of junior college.
And your husband?
He's a deputy sheriff.
You have ongoing training?
Yes, ma'am.
And you, sir, what do you do for a living?
I'm a tile contractor
How long have you been doing that?
since '73.
Okay, now let's get to the case. Miss Lubbock, you had 3 parrots. How long had you had them?
My oldest African gray I had for approximately 15, 16 years.
And what's their life expectancy?
40 to 60 years.
And the other 2?
My severe macaw I had for about 3.5 years, and also for my Timna.
And this is what the lawsuit is about. You hired Mr. Nunez to come in and sand your floors in your house and seal them. And he did that.
Correct.
And your parrots died.
Correct.
So you want him to pay for your parrots, their vet bills, the casket, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
What did you do in preparation to your house to have your floors sanded?
We didn't do anything. We just took the birds outside.
When you sand floors, what comes up?
Generally dust, but he was using a wet sander, so you don't see dust particles flying all over.
So you're telling me there wasn't any dust in your house?
My birds, I had taken them outside.
I'm not asking you about your birds now. I'm
Sorry.
just asking you generally.
Oh.
When you sand floors, there's usually
Dust.
dust. You don't have to be a college graduate to figure that out. 35-year-old real estate agent with 2 years of college could figure that out, that you have dust. And when you seal the floors after the sanding, they seal it with,
Chemicals.
and the chemicals usually,
Toxic.
don't know toxic, but they usually smell.
Yes.
And they do have places where you can board animals while you're doing things in the house, just as if you were going away. Who are you?
I'm Donna's mother, and I was.
Do you
there.
live with them?
No, I don't.
You have your own house?
Yes, I do.
Could have taken your birds to your mother's house.
Yes.
You chose to keep your birds home. One, I understand from your complaint, died outside. 2 of them, however, died in the house. That's your fault. That's not his fault. If you had a baby, do you have children?
I do, and she was also in the house.
Well,
we were
then
outside.
there's something clearly wrong
We
with
were
you.
outside when this happened. We had gone outside, and they opened the windows. My birds were on the patio outside of what we thought was harm's way. He never told us that there'd be a toxic gas. You could not smell the dust. You couldn't see the dust in the air.
Why were you outside?
Because it was a nice day, and we were trying to stay out of their way.
Well, if that's the only reason that you were staying outside, I'm glad your child is well. You have to accept responsibility. This was your fault, not his fault, because if you're having somebody come in and whip up dust, whether they use a wet process or a dry process, it whips up dust. When you seal it, it stinks.
It was already sealed, and we went to the
No,
manufacturers.
listen.
After 72 hours, it's not toxic.
Well, did your bird die within 72 hours?
They died immediately of him sanding the process.
Well, then what I'm telling you, madam, is You should have taken your animals out of the house. That's your responsibility. And if you didn't take them far enough away from the house, that's your responsibility. That's not
It's his
Mr.
responsibility
Nunez's
to tell me the
responsibility.
dangers
Miss
of-
Lovick, it's harder to accept responsibility for the death of your birds than it is to blame it on somebody else. Life starts with accepting responsibility. It's your fault.
I tried to expect responsibility for the death of my birds. I only asked for him to pay the vet bill. There's
Just a
no way.
second. If you accept responsibility,
He agreed to pay my vet bill.
I'm speaking. If you accept responsibility for the death of your birds, he doesn't pay anything.
He never once mentioned that there was a toxic chemical or gas that could be released from sanding our floors. The birds were outside. They opened the windows, and that's what exposed the birds to the fumes and the silica.
Miss Lovick, accept responsibility. It's your fault. Goodbye.
Parties are excused. You may step. Your Honor, this is case number 28 on the calendar in the matter of Hamilton versus Hamilton. You're welcome, Judge. Parties have been sworn in, Your Honor. You may be seated, sir. Have a seat, please.
Mrs. Hamilton, this is your stepson. Is this your husband?
Yes.
Oh, a little background. I gather from your complaint and your answer that you were divorced.
Yes, ma'am.
From his mother. You can step up here, sir. And for most of his life, you'd had very little contact.
That's correct.
More recently, you contacted him or you contacted your father. Which way?
I contacted him.
Son contacted you, and you began to build a relationship. Now, Jason has had a troubled adolescence. Is that a fair statement, Jason?
Yeah.
And it is your claim, Mrs. Hamilton, that your funds were used to help Jason out when he got us into some trouble with the law.
Yes.
For an attorney, for restitution payments, and at that time he was in fact living with you. Yes. To live with you. Jason says that the lawyer was your idea. He was perfectly happy with the public defender, and that the restitution he has paid for by working it off while he was living with you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with you, Jason. How old are you?
22.
What were you in trouble for, Jason?
Aggravated harassment and stalking in the fourth from my ex-girlfriend.
Okay, so let me hear about the first loan that you claim for his lawyer.
When we bailed Jason out on September 18th of last year, Jason was not happy with his public defender at all. He verbalized this to both my husband and myself.
What did he say?
He said he didn't feel that he was going to fight for him. He was going to, he felt that the public defender just wanted him to plea out to anything and get the case over and done with as quickly as possible. And Jason did not want to do that. He wanted to fight it. He didn't want to be charged, and he didn't want to violate his parole from his previous court case and actions on that.
What were you on parole for, Jason?
Arson.
What burned down, Jason?
Garage.
Go ahead.
On his first court date after he was bailed out, we went and got him an attorney.
Who's we?
My husband and I.
Go ahead.
After that, as far as with the restitution, initially he had to live with us as part of us bailing him out. And when we decided we were moving out of the area, he was given the option to move with us or stay in the area, and we would figure something out and work it out. He decided that he did want to move with us. So my husband and I paid that restitution from his previous case in order to free
The
it
arson
up.
case?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other part of the restitution was for the current case. After everything was settled, there was $100 restitution.
So he
from
pled
that.
guilty. You pled guilty in the current case involving your ex-girlfriend.
Right. I couldn't afford the lawyer anymore, so I had no choice. And I can't...
Were you at that time that the matter was scheduled for trial still living with your father and stepmother?
No.
Did you ever pay the lawyer any money?
No.
So it was just a $1,000 retainer that you paid the lawyer?
Correct.
Yes.
That was after Jason moved out, after
Correct.
you had the altercation in your house with him?
Yes.
Mrs. Hamilton, so far I haven't heard anything about a loan.
Before Jason was bailed out, on the phone conversations, he was informed that anything that was pertaining to this legal case was a loan and was to be paid back. That was one of the conditions of him being bailed out. Jason made comments about how he was not like his sister, who also we had a problem with before that. He was not like his sister, and he would pay us back that money. That was said numerous times, and at the end of Jason stay in our house. Because everything was a loan, I had him sign a promissory note.
Well, I know Jason says that note, you sort of forced him to sign the note because you said you were going to have his bail revoked if he didn't sign the note.
That was not
Jason,
how it was
well, I'm going to
worded.
turn over to you now, Jason.
When I was on the phone with them before I was bailed out, I was not told that it was a loan.
I'm sorry, that's wrong.
I moved in with them. I did not know I was going to move in with them. I thought they were going to bail me out, take me home, but instead they brought me to their place, worked for them. My work would be to pay off whatever I did.
Well, what kind of work did you do, Jason?
I helped him their construction business.
What did you do?
Labor. It was, unload the truck, load the truck, help my father, stuff like that. As far as me with my restitution, like I said, I never asked for the money. I never asked for any of it. I just simply said, when they went to pay it, I said, you don't have to do that. They said, oh, no, don't worry about it. I said,
No,
okay.
that's not what parents say, Jason. They don't use the word, oh, don't worry about it. They might have said, when you get yourself together, we hope you'll pay us back. Does that sound right? Huh?
Yes.
That sounds right. Life is so simple, Mrs. Hamilton. That's what parents say, even if they have an ongoing relationship with their children, if money is tight in a household. You don't say, well, this is a loan, and you will pay me back so much each month on this loan.
Your Honor,
Now,
in the beginning, he did agree. Before I bailed him out, I told him, if I bail you out, you've got to pay this money back in a timely fashion, and you've got to get your act together, because the lifestyle he was living is totally, I'm afraid he's going to end up in jail for the rest of his life.
Where's your mother?
It's in the back of Buffalo.
Did you live with her all your life?
Yes.
Are you still in touch with her?
I live with her right now.
You have a sister?
Yes, I do.
How old's your sister?
19.
She in trouble?
No.
What kind of trouble?
Well, when we had her with us, she steals, she lies,
She's never been to jail, but she is a very emotionally troubled person, and she's been in and out of, she was in a group home at one point.
Jason, tell me about the conversation you had with your father about the lawyer, about the public defender.
I was going to get a new PD to begin with, because the guy that was representing me, he just didn't know what he was talking about. He had no clue.
What do you mean? Just a second. What do you mean you were going to get a new PD, public defender? You think that they give them out if you don't like one, you get a chance to get another one?
Well, that's what they were going to do. When I got rid of...
You live in a very good jurisdiction. If a criminal defendant came before me and said, I don't like that lawyer, I want to get another lawyer, you know what I would say to them? Go hire your own lawyer. You want to pick and choose? Go hire your own lawyer. This is the public defender for the day. You don't like this one? Get some money and go hire your own lawyer. You know, this is not one from column A and one from column B. You get one chance. Do you understand, Jason?
Yeah, I understand.
Good. Are you working now?
Yes, I am.
What kind of work are you doing?
I'm a barback at a banquet hall.
Hope this New York State Liquor Authority don't know about that. Is this arson conviction that you have a felony arson?
Yes.
Woohoo! Hope they don't value their liquor license. Listen to me, Jason. I want you to listen to me very carefully. I am not so concerned about the $1,000 that your stepmother and stepfather put up for the lawyer. I think they're going to have to tolerate that, because I think that that's what parents do if they're afraid that their child is going to be confined. And I'm not so sure that that was a loan. But I'm concerned about the restitution, Jason, because what possible value is it to your moral compass if somebody else pays your restitution? Restitution is what you're supposed to pay, right?
I understand that. I was paying it.
How? I don't understand how you were paying.
Working
with money I
beforehand.
gave him.
Just a second.
Not just money you gave me. I was doing odd jobs here and there.
Well, you paid some of it, but they paid the
I was
rest.
paying on
Just
it.
a second. But they paid the rest. Well, paying the rest, it doesn't teach you any kind of a lesson. That's your responsibility. That's not your father's responsibility. That's not your stepmother's responsibility. That's your responsibility. The criminal justice system doesn't want to see. What do you do for a living?
I'm a real estate investor.
Doesn't want to see this lady who works, what do you do for a living?
I'm an investor also.
I don't know what that means, but life is too short.
Buy real estate.
They don't want to see their money going to pay your restitution. They didn't set fire to the garage and they didn't stalk your girlfriend.
I didn't either.
Well, then you lied to the court, sir, when you pled guilty.
I didn't know, what am I going to do if I ain't got money?
You know what innocent people do? They go to trial.
You have
just a second, Jason. You're 22 years old, is that what
Yes.
you told me before? How many times have you been arrested? Think, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. How many times have you been arrested?
13 times.
13. Shh. Come on. 13 times. 22 years old. And how many convictions do you have, Jason?
I have 4 convictions.
I have 5 children. How many kids you got?
4.
9 children altogether. Not one arrest.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. And later today,
Miss Knapp, if someone tried to kill me with a car, I wouldn't get into bed with them for a deductible or anything else.
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Nicole Han Hamilton says her stepson, Jason Hamilton, owes for loans to retain an attorney and to pay restitution. Nicole says Jason has been arrested for arson and stalking.
You've been arrested 13 times. That cannot all be a mistake. The 4 times that you were convicted is not a mistake. The last 2 times that you pled guilty, I mean, you know the system, evidently. You're smart enough to know the system, that if you want a new PD, all you got to do is stamp your feet around, say, I'm not getting good representation. What you're supposed to do is not do things that get you into any trouble. Do you understand?
I know that.
Okay. And if you didn't learn the first time, and if you didn't learn the second time, the 10th time, you should have learned. By the time you got to the 12th time, it should have been bells go off in your head. Now you're at unlucky 13. Jason, you're 22 years old. You want to die?
No.
You don't care?
No, I care. I'm working now. I'm going for my GED. I have my life on track.
Good.
That's
then
what
pay your restitution. The lawyer, it's yours.
I just wanted him to learn a lesson.
He's
about
going to pay his
responsibility.
restitution. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $695. That's all.
Thank you, Al.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I look at them as just white trash. What are they going to do? Sue their own son when he hits 18 for all the stuff that they paid for him?
As people can see, he is a punk. He'll always be a punk. I wash my hands with him. I got a beautiful 14-month-old son. I'm doing it right this time.
Smoking pot. I'm in probation. I don't want to get involved in no pot.
He's the one that smokes the pot, and I told him I didn't want it in my house.
I don't have a father. That's the way I look at it.
I'm here to guide you and show you the proper way. If you don't want to do that, I'm done.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Knapp versus Wheeler. Step forward.
Delivery truck driver Barbara Knapp is suing her ex-boyfriend, steelworker Claude Wheeler, for purposely driving her van into a ditch. Claude claims he swerved to miss a deer.
Ms. Knapp, it is your claim that Mr. Wheeler, who used to be your boyfriend, wrecked your car.
Correct.
And in addition to the damages to the car, you want some money for pain and suffering. I don't know what pain and suffering you want. You'll, I'm sure, explain it to me. Tell me about the day of the incident.
Okay, on December 28th, I do believe, we went grocery shopping, stopped at a bar and had a few drinks and was coming home and...
Okay, what time did you get to the bar?
8 o'clock.
8 p.m.?
8 p.m.
And how long did you stay at the bar?
Oh, possibly an hour maybe. No, not that long because we had groceries in the car, so about an hour then, say.
Is that right, sir?
Correct.
Okay, you stopped at a bar, groceries in the car, went home, on your way back to the grocery.
On our way back home, and we were discussing just things, and an old boyfriend was brought up because he was apparently came into the bar, and I had made his comment that he's still loving my life, and he didn't like it, so I don't know what was said, but then he swatted me upside the head, in the back of the head, and then I had told him that that was it and it was over, and he proceeded to say, oh, I'll show you that, and he drove my car down into the ditch. The next thing you know, a pole's coming, and we were headed straight for the pole, and he turned it just enough to go past the pole, but in the meantime we kind of got wedged into the ditch and had to go out the windows to get out, and then I was just kind of in shock, I do believe, and
okay.
That was that.
Well, we were driving home that night. I had a few drinks, and we were arguing, and I was looking at her.
Try looking at me.
I don't recall slapping her upside the head or striking her. We were arguing, and I was looking at her, and when I turned my eyes back to the road, there were deer in the road, and I swerved to the right to miss the deer, and as soon as we got to the edge of the road, the snow sucked us into the ditch. I didn't do it intentionally.
Don't remember the deer?
There was no deer. He did it on purpose.
And you issued a report?
Mm-hmm.
You have a copy of that report?
Yes, I do.
I'd like to see it, please. You have any other police reports?
No, I went to the trooper's barracks to try to get the actual report from my statement and his statement, but apparently they do not let that out. They don't.
Your Honor, I have a signed statement of her from the night of the accident.
Can I see it, please? That's what I'm looking for. Well, you did sign a statement on the 28th of December, Ms. Knapp. You didn't say anything about him purposely damaging your car. You say at about 2 or 3 o'clock, my boyfriend was at my house. He had a margarita, which was left over from last night. At about 7 o'clock, we went grocery shopping at Wegmans and then went to Jit's Bar for a couple of beers and pool. He had 2 or 3 beers there. Then we started home. Claude was driving. I wasn't paying attention, and all of a sudden, we were going towards the ditch. I didn't see if there was a deer, just that he was going towards the ditch. You didn't tell the police that he tried to kill both of you?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I just was still in shock from all of it, and I just didn't. I just was going to go with the story with the deer because I just was in shock because that's what he wanted me to say, and I just didn't.
What happened?
Notice, Penal Law Section 210.45, in a written instrument, any person who knowingly makes a false statement which such person does not believe to be true has committed a crime under the laws of the state of New York and is punishable by a Class A misdemeanor. And that's what you signed.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any reason why you think, Ms. Knapp, that I should believe you now? Ms. Knapp, I have a couple more questions for you. When did you and the defendant separate?
It was
around the 1st of February.
So between December 28th and the 1st of February, you still lived together?
No, we did not live together.
We just dated.
And you dated the same way that you were dated before?
Pretty much.
It wasn't not in my eyes, because it was over in my eyes, and I just wanted to get a deductible from him, so I kind of...
Which I did pay. I paid the $500 deductible.
Yes. But I figured if I broke up with him, I wouldn't seen any money or nothing, so I kind of just had to hang in there to get my deductible. And
then a month and a half later, 2 months down the road, she's after this $5,000.
That's not going to happen.
Thank you.
Ms. Knapp, if someone tried to kill me with a car, I wouldn't get into bed with them for a deductible or anything else. And if you did, that's your problem. Bye. Case dismissed.
Parties are excused. You may step out. This is case number 68 on the calendar in the matter of Noma versus Drake. Parties have been sworn in. You may be seated.
Mr. Noma, you rented a room in your home to the defendant. According to you, she moved out, and she owes you for the last month's rent. In addition, you claim that she left the place a mess. She caused some damage to the room, and you want to be compensated for that. Ms. Drake says she owes you absolutely nothing. She didn't have to give you any sort of notice for the last month because your conduct gave her the willies. And you're a bit of a control freak, and it was really your conduct that forced her to move. In addition, she says she left the room in substantially the same condition that she found it. It was a mess when she found it. That's the way she left it. Right?
Correct.
How did you find this room, Miss Drake?
Well, when I first moved in, the paint on the walls, part of it was...
I don't mean how did you find the... How did you locate this room to rent?
Oh, through a mutual friend.
When?
Late October, the beginning of November.
Did you sign a lease?
No, I did not.
You had a month-to-month tenancy?
Yes, basically.
When did you move in?
I moved in the beginning of November.
Give me the day.
If I have to throw a date out there, probably about the 8th, between the 8th or the 10th.
Did you pay November's rent?
Yes, I did.
What was the rent?
$550.
Did you pay December's rent?
December, I believe I was a bit late on that one. Yes, I did.
Why were you late?
I had just lost my job, and it took me a couple days to get the money, but I came up with it.
What about January?
January, yes, I paid that.
Is that correct, Mr. Noma?
Yes, she did, Your Honor, but she still owes me for a bounce check, which is another case.
Don't tell me about another case. You know, I'm not as young as I used to be. I can only think about one thing
I'm
at
sorry,
a time.
Your Honor. She still does owe me $335 for that.
Are you confusing me again, Mr. Noma?
No, I'm not, Your Honor.
January she paid $550. Is that right?
Correct.
February.
February, I paid.
She did pay, but she owes me late charges for that.
But she paid it?
She paid.
It's March we're talking about.
Yes, we're talking about March, Your Honor.
Okay. What happened in February, Miss Drake, that caused you to move out of the house?
Basically, the living conditions, I couldn't deal with it anymore.
That is really kind of mushy. I don't understand that.
Well, basically, Hiroshi, he became too controlling. My privacy was invaded. People were going into my room. There was an incident where he went into my room while I was going to get the rent to pay the landlord, and he had found something that didn't even belong to me. And
Your Honor,
at that instant when I got back, he came and attacked me in front of all his friends and totally humiliated me. And
what did he find?
He found a bong in my room, which belonged to the guest.
What is that?
Smoking tool to use if you were to smoke drugs in one of my friend's possessions, which I wasn't aware of until that morning before I left.
So he found drug paraphernalia in your room.
Correct.
That's what we used to call drug paraphernalia. Now they call it something else.
Yeah, man.
Okay. How did you find this in her room?
I went into her room February. She knows that I went into her room.
She knows now.
She knows.
Why did you go into her room?
Because, Your Honor, I was looking for something. I was looking for something that she told me to look for.
What?
I believe it was a receipt or a contract that we had because she wasn't paying on time. So I had to go into her room and look for that contract, and I told her about it.
Just a minute, I want you to, Mr. Noma.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
You can't double talk me, Mr. Noma. First you said she told you to go inside the room to look for a contract.
Mm-hmm.
Did she tell you where to go and look in her room?
It was on the table.
That's not my question.
Yes, she did. On the table.
She said, go into my room, the contract is on the table.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that what you said, Miss Drake?
No, it's not.
No, Mr. Noma,
lying,
listen to me, because then you said I went into her room, she knew I was going to look for it.
That's a lie.
There's a difference. You have to be very careful, Mr. Noma. You may have a just cause today. If you fudge the truth, you're not going to be successful. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
So you were snooping around in her room.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. And you found this drug paraphernalia.
Yes, ma'am.
Much better. You see how easy that was? Then you don't get tortured.
I apologize.
Right? I don't like to torture people. It doesn't make me feel terrific. Okay, so you were snooping around in her room and you confronted her with the drug paraphernalia?
Yes, ma'am.
Who was there when you confronted her with the drug paraphernalia?
One of her friends was in the room when I confronted her in her room. I knocked on her door, went in her room, and talked to her about it. She kept denying it. All my friends were outside in the living room. They were not in the room. That room is about 15 by 15. All 7 people cannot fit in a small room.
Fine. Okay, now, Mr. Noma, let's get back to what you are suing for, which is March's rent.
Yes, ma'am.
Was Miss Drake living in her room in March?
No, ma'am. She gave me a 30-day notice at the end of February, an oral agreement that we had.
Did you give him the 30-day notice?
I gave him a notice, yes, probably, I believe it was February 26th or 27th, right before I moved, because I couldn't live there anymore. I told him I can't deal with it. This is my notice.
Okay. And basically what you're telling me is you left because he was invading your space.
Correct. It was unbearable.
And you felt that he had violated the terms of your tenancy by going into your room without your permission.
Correct.
I agree. Okay?
Yeah.
I agree with you. You moved out on what date?
The 27th of February.
Did you take all of your stuff with you?
No, I did not.
What did you leave there?
I still have yet to move my furniture.
Then you owe him for March rent. Because just because you're behind isn't sleeping in the room, if your furniture and personal property is in the room, you're still renting his room. Do you understand?
Correct.
You can't walk out and say, well, I'm going to go hang out with my friends and I'll go get my property whenever I feel like it. I don't have to pay rent there if I'm not sleeping there.
He didn't say I had to pay the rent for March. He said, we actually settled the date. I don't remember the date exactly. He had told me if you don't have your stuff out by this date. And he said he would not let me get my stuff until I paid the rent.
Just a second. When did you go back there to get your stuff after the 27th of February?
Around between the 10th to the 14th or something like that of March. I went and got all my mail and my clothing, and I had told him if I could leave my furniture in the room, and then he had asked me if one of his friends could sleep on my bed and use my furniture while it was still there, and I agreed to that.
But you had your stuff there without his permission until the 15th of March.
Well, he knew it was...
I don't care what he knew. You had your stuff there, along with your clothing and everything else, until the 15th of March.
Correct.
And he hadn't given you permission between the 27th of February and the 15th of March to leave your stuff there, only after the 15th of March. Is that right?
Correct.
That's why he's not suing you for April and May and June. So you owe him $550. Now let's get to the condition of the room.
Your Honor, the condition of the room was fine when she moved in. Prior to her moving in, one of our mutual friends was there. He never really had stuff. He never really posted anything on the walls. She posted posters on the walls. There's like
Show me photographs.
I do have photographs of a hole in the door, which one of her friends did. And this is an agreement that we had that she's going to reimburse me of any damages that she incurs in the room.
Who wrote this?
I did.
You're not going to law school, are you?
No, ma'am, but I was planning to.
I don't think so. Okay. Got a cigarette burn. Got some schmutz on the carpet. How did the hole get put in the door?
That was from a water bottle that was tossed by one of my friends to another friend of mine, and they didn't catch it, and it hit the door.
Well, so you have to fix that, right?
Yes.
So you owe him $865, $315 for the door and $550 for rent. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Good luck. Have a happy life.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
It was just too crazy, controlling, and
her parents would call about 5 times every day looking for her.
Calling my parents by my bag, calling my job, snooping through my things.
I wasn't really snooping around or trying to be sneaky and stuff like that.
Basically, it was just crazy.
At the end, when I finally got fed up, I mean, I can't help people who can't help themselves.
Like living with my parents again, basically.
Don't be fooled by other people. They might be nice, but you don't know what's underneath them.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Ottoman versus Richardson. Step forward.
21-year-old student Joseph Ottoman is suing fellow student Timothy Richardson for assaulting him outside a bar. Timothy says a drunken Joseph and his female friends started the fight.
Mr. Ottoman, it is your claim that the defendant assaulted you outside of a bar.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Richardson says that there was an altercation outside the bar, but that altercation was started by you and finished by him, right?
Correct.
When was it?
It was August 28th.
And what's the name of the bar you were in?
The bar I saw these guys in earlier was called the Mystique.
That's where you had been for the evening?
Well, that was one of the places.
Is that the last place that you were in?
No, ma'am.
Well, what's the last place?
A bar called Zydeco's.
How many bars had you been to in total that evening?
Those 2.
What time had you arrived at Mystique?
Probably around 10.
Who were you with?
I arrived by myself. I was meeting 2 girls down there.
What time did you leave Mystique?
Oh, must have been around midnight.
And that's when you went to this Zydeco's. And how long did you stay there?
Till it closed.
What time?
2.
Who drove?
We walked. One of the girls I was with lives about 2 blocks away from downtown, and we were walking to her house from there.
What happened when you left Zydeco's and you were walking home at 2 o'clock in the morning?
We were walking home to this girl's house. She points them out. They were across the street from us. She's all, there's those guys that were talking to me earlier. They start saying some things. I'm on my phone. I'm not paying attention. All of a sudden I hear, F you, slut, blah, blah, blah. I say, what's going on here? I go run up to them. And I mean, it was a very awkward situation. I mean, 2 in the morning, all of us, 21, 22, nobody there was sober. It was a very drunken situation.
Well, that's good.
It could have very easily been avoided.
Mr. Ottoman, that's the first good thing that you've said to me, sir. You said we were all drunk.
Sure.
Well, unfortunately, Mr. Ottoman, you can't speak for anybody else, so I assume that what you're really saying was I was drunk.
Sure.
So you acted with a certain amount of reckless abandon by running across the street.
I agree.
Good. Now, what happened when you got there?
Words were exchanged.
By the way, who were you talking to on the phone?
I couldn't tell you.
What do you mean you couldn't tell me? You said you were on the phone.
Yeah. Well, actually, I do know it's a girl named Corey. She was one of the ones that was actually there, but she was inside for some reason. I don't know why I was calling her.
I don't understand why you were talking to her if she was inside. Did
Me
she
either.
call you?
I couldn't tell you.
You couldn't because you don't remember?
No, I don't know why I was calling her. I was with her.
Okay. You don't know why you were calling her. So you ran across the street and you said what to Mr. Richardson?
Well, actually, Ashley ran across the street, and I followed her.
Ashley?
Yes, ma'am.
Who was also drunk?
Yes. The one that they were talking to.
What did she say when she went running across the street?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
And you went running after her?
Yes, ma'am.
Keep going.
After I get over there, words were exchanged. Started a little scuffle. I don't know exactly.
What do you mean a scuffle? I don't understand what that means, scuffle.
Sizing each other up, I guess.
I don't know what that means, sizing each other up.
There was no physical contact until I turned around, walking away, about 5 steps away, not even looking at this guy, runs up, hits me in the back of my head, and I fall down on my face. I bust 2 teeth out on the concrete.
And you hadn't hit him?
And he jumps in his car.
Just a second. And you hadn't hit him?
No.
And nobody...
No physical contact whatsoever.
And you're positive of that?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's what the assault is about?
Yes.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
So what you're saying is you were too drunk, you didn't connect?
Right.
He did.
When my back was turned and I was walking away.
Listen to me. You know what happens sometimes?
What?
Doodle happens.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Joseph Ottoman says he was assaulted outside a bar by fellow student Timothy Richardson. Timothy says Joseph started it, and he finished it.
Now we'll hear you, Mr. Richardson.
Well, first off,
Listen to me. See my eyes?
Yeah.
That's where your eyes are going to be. Not on your shoes, not on your hands. Right here.
Okay. Where the altercation happened, it was like 2 blocks behind Old Town, where all the bars were. And I was with some other friends that were out there, and I was walking with them. I lost my ride, and so I got on the cell phone, and as I got off the phone, I heard this Ashley, I presumed was his girlfriend, why the whole thing got started in the first place. And I heard her say something to me. I replied with no vulgarity. I just looked over, I replied nice. I was like, hey girl, what's up? And before she even said anything, he came out and started saying, oh, you know, F you, F this, you talking, blah, blah, all of that. And I was like, I'm not even talking to you, what's your problem? And then he came out into the middle of the street and was challenging me to come to him. And like, I don't have a habit of going and picking a fight when I'm outnumbered and all that. So I was just like, okay, yeah, that's right, I'll keep walking away. He's like, yeah, you know, you effing P word, keep walking away. I was like, all right, buddy, that's right, I'll keep walking away. So when I got to the car, he came and he got in my face, and that was the only time that I remember saying anything vulgar at all, because he was in my face. And And then on the second encounter, I tried to get away, and it's in the police report. He's like, yeah, that's right, get back in your effing Subaru. And he was in my face, and then when he tried to sidestep him, that's when confrontation arose. He pushed me, and the next thing I know, he comes at me, punching me. And he actually connected with the last punch. He hit me in the lip. I fell down. I yelled for Chris, and that's when he rose his hands up, and he's like, I'll F Chris up. And when he backed up and put his hands up, I didn't want it, because I was kind of on my knees. I felt vulnerable. So I jumped up, hit him in the side of the face, and he had fell down, and then his other friend came to us trying to confront us. He's like, oh, what have you done? Because I saw that he, you know, I hit him once, he fell to the ground, and I knew, you know, he was in bad shape. And then his other friend came to us, and at that point, I thought the best thing to do was to leave, and we got out of there.
Okay. Who's Emma Lee?
She was a lady who lived in the apartment building right in front of where...
Yes! The only one who's not a friend, who says there was a lot of cursing, both sides. Doesn't know who started the physical fight, but there was definitely an acknowledgement of a fight. 3 or 4 punches were thrown by each guy. Then the fella in the white pants hit another fella in the neck or head, and Joe fell face first into the street. I came outside to help. I kept him from getting up before the ambulance arrived. Emma Lee says she saw lots of fighting before you got hit, sir.
It was drunken fighting. Now, you gotta understand, there was no contact made. I understand I was drunk. I admit that.
Listen to me. If you were drunk and there was lots of fighting, she saw a lot of fighting. So what you're saying is you were too drunk, you didn't connect.
Right.
He did.
When
When my back was turned and
He
I was walking away.
Listen to me. He did.
Right.
He connected.
Okay.
You were too drunk to connect.
Right.
Why are you here?
Because I was walking away, calling it a night. When he decided to connect was when I was walking away, trying to get out of there. I didn't want any more to do with the situation. I was already talking to him, face back to this guy. He decides, runs up, hits me in the back of the head, jumps in his car, and takes off.
You know what happens sometimes?
What?
Doodle happens. That's what happens when you're drunk and stupid. You know who started it? You and Ashley. You know who finished it? He did. You started it. He finished it. Stop being a crybaby. That's what happens when you're 21 years old and drunk and stupid. Things happen. And you ended up without 2 front teeth. That's your fault. It's not my fault. It's not his fault. Sometimes when you act drunk and stupid, you get the worst of the fight. Ends up on your face. That's what happens sometimes. So if you want to take this as a good life's lesson, sir, you don't drink until you're so stupid that you don't remember who you're talking to on the phone, what you're talking about. You stay sober enough to remain in control of your actions. And when you don't come crying to courts and say, you got to help me now because I was drunk and stupid. I make myself clear to you. Your case is dismissed.
Parties are excused. You may step out. Your Honor, this is case number 43 on the calendar in the matter of McManus versus Leal. Parties have been sworn in. You may be seated. Sir, have a seat.
All right, Mr. McManus, it is your claim that the defendant, Mr. Leal, owes you, really you and your wife, for 2 loans that you made to him during the course of his relationship with your daughter.
Correct.
One was for $1,500 towards the purchase of a car for him.
Yes.
The second was $125 that he needed because he was short of rent, and he called you and asked you for the money. Mr. Leal says that you generously agreed to help him buy this car, and it was a gift. The $1,500 was a gift, and as was the $125 that you gave him towards the rent. Mr. Leal is counterclaiming because he says when he attempted to break off the relationship with your lovely daughter, she threw a hissy fit and broke a whole bunch of his property. Yes. Correct, sir? I'm going to start with you. When were you and Elizabeth dating?
January, I believe.
Of what year?
Was it 2003?
Elizabeth, when?
It was in March of 2003.
March.
And there was a time that you lived together. Would you tell me when that was?
After dating there, we actually both moved to Michigan, where I went to school at, and Mr. McManus wasn't too happy there.
Right, this is a whole saga here. When did you live together, Mr. Leal?
But I moved down, and that was in January, I believe.
2004?
Yes.
Now, you didn't have a car.
No.
You were sharing a car with Elizabeth?
Yes.
You wanted your own car, and you approached your parents.
Mm-hmm.
And they agreed to give you how much money?
They gave me about $3,900.
Go ahead.
I found a car that was decently priced for $4,900.
You saw a car for $4,900.
Mm-hmm.
All you had was $3,900.
Mm-hmm. So
what did you do, Gilbert?
I didn't really think twice about it. At the time, I didn't really find anything that was working with $3,900.
Life is very short.
Right.
And I have a lot of work to do.
Right.
So, you have $3,900. Mm-hmm. The car you want is $4,900. Mm-hmm. What did you do?
Well, we were living together, like you already know. At the time, me and Elizabeth kind of briefly discussed it a little bit, but it still wasn't anything, too serious. So her dad approached me with helping me.
Gilbert, at some point you had to call Mr. McManus and say, I have $3,900. The car I want is $4,900. Can you help me out?
Right.
So, I don't want to put words in your mouth. That's not what I do. How did the McManuses find out that the car you sought exceeded your bank account?
Through Elizabeth.
Did you discuss with your parents the fact that his eyes were bigger than his stomach?
Yes, Your Honor, and there was a...
Just a second.
Okay.
So he told you, and you went to your parents.
Uh-huh. He also spoke to my parents.
Just a second. Who went there first, Elizabeth?
Me. Okay.
And what did you say to mother and or father?
I told them that Gil had backed my car into someone else's car in a Taco Bell parking lot and took off paint that he said he was going to pay for, and that the whole car situation wasn't working out, and he needs a car so he can get to work and I can do my thing. Can you...
That's what you told your parents?
Yes.
Can you what?
Can you help him out by giving him a loan?
Who did you discuss it with, your father or your mother?
My mom.
What did your mother say?
We had offered to loan Gil the money well before he found the car, and then they moved down here and he found the car, and then Elizabeth called and said, you know, he could really use that help of that loan that you had offered him, because the car that he wants is $5,000 and his parents was able to give him $3,500, and so we gave Gil a loan for $1,500.
That was in February of 2004?
Yes.
Now, when did you break up?
March 14th, 2004.
So, a couple of weeks later, right? But there was a second loan. What was the second loan about?
Well, before they moved down, I had told him that if he needed help making the rent, food, whatever, to cover his share, if he were to advise me if he was in any problem, that I would be willing to help. He called me directly on the phone, said he was short of the rent. I knew that she didn't want to hear about that problem because she was struggling to make up her end
So you
of
gave
it.
him $125.
On the condition he'd pay me back when the first time he got paid, which would have been within 10 days, as I remember it. I've never heard from him since.
Now, a couple of weeks later, you decided you wanted out of this relationship. Tell me why.
We had been arguing pretty much when we moved in. It was just tough on us. I wasn't working full time, and she then started talking with her ex-boyfriend and different things like that, and disregarded our relationship altogether. I said it wasn't going to work out, so
Now let's
I
get to your
decided to move.
counterclaim, Gilbert.
Well, counterclaim was that day that I moved out that night. She decided to help me move by breaking my stuff and throwing it at me. On top of that, I had two items that were very close to me and very personal to me that she threw and lost.
Allow me to intervene if I may. I was,
Okay.
if I could be so bold, Judge.
You can't. You have to apologize.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
You double lock the door from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Nasty. Take your hands off your hip.
Sorry. Yes, I agree. That was nasty. And he said, I'm leaving. And I snapped.
And later today,
You have a drug problem?
No, ma'am.
So then why weren't you working?
We were working.
Well,
was
two
just-
people working, it would seem to me you could have some sort of place for your children.
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Elizabeth McManus and her parents, Rich and Manon McManus, claim Elizabeth's ex-boyfriend, Gilbert Layell, owes for a loan to buy a car and unpaid rent.
Go ahead. We did have a big fight. And what he's referring to is that he left the apartment for 2 hours. Didn't tell me where he was going. Nothing. And I ended up locking the doors on him, and I went to bed. And so whenever he came back, he's pounding on the door, and I wasn't going to let him in because...
You mean you double locked the door from the inside?
Mm-hmm.
Nasty.
I was trying to do that. Yeah,
Take your hands off your hip.
Sorry. Yes, I agree. That was nasty. I was trying to show him that don't just leave me for hours and don't tell me where you go. So what I'm trying to get at is that he came in the house, and it ended up that he said, I'm sick of this. I'm leaving. And I snapped. Your Honor, I was very upset because we have this agreement to be living together, and he's trying to bail on me. So I said, I will help you move out. And I took his things, and I went like that. And the rock he was referring to and an angel that were important to him, the last I ever saw those items were on the bed.
What did you break, Elizabeth?
I don't believe I broke anything.
You were throwing his stuff.
I shoved it off the table. I didn't, throw it as like launching it at him.
You didn't pick up my glasses and throw them at me, crush them and throw them at me?
I tossed things across the room.
Elizabeth, now your brother is dying to say something. Was he there that evening?
He was not there that fight.
Mr. McManus, you want to say anything?
Yeah, briefly, when
Well, then
Gil,
stand up. Stand up by me, honey.
when Gil was moving out the final time, he was fully packed, and at no point did I witness any destructive act.
Well, your sister already has told me that she threw his stuff around, right? So you're not going to say she
certainly can't
didn't
dispute that.
because she didn't. Good.
But I don't believe that it was a result in any destructiveness, meaning his items at no point, to my observations, were broken as a result of any arguable tantrums.
Good.
May I say something, Your Honor?
Yes.
When Elizabeth and Gil came home, and Elizabeth found out about the $125, what came out was, Mom, he wasn't short $125. He's still short $200 for the rent. I have a hole in my wall. I have a hole in my door because he's gotten upset and he's creating damage. And I said to Elizabeth at that time, he can't stay. You know, I don't mind supporting you. You're my daughter. I'm not going to support your boyfriend.
Got it. I got it. One of the problems is your husband, behind his daughter's back, had a conversation with Gilbert. He was well-meaning, but he said to Gilbert, look, so you're going to be short. If you're short, you let me know because I'll help you out. I can understand why Elizabeth was annoyed because he's supposed to be taking care of business and he wasn't taking care of business. Right, Elizabeth?
Yes. And
all right. But I'm going to tell you something that you said to me. It was really kind of stupid. And that is, if he decided to move out because you weren't getting along, why you lost your temper, I don't know. I would have thrown him a party. Not thrown his things, I would have thrown him a party. And you really had no right to lock him out of the apartment because irrespective of where he got the money, he was paying rent. Now, Gilbert, your parents love you?
Yes.
Is that why they were helping you with your money?
Yes.
Mr. McManus doesn't love you. And the reason he was helping you was because of his daughter, not because of you. He doesn't care whether he doesn't see you starting today until hell freezes over. Now, are you a moral person, Gilbert?
Yes, Your Honor.
Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you.
Thank you. You see, now, if I was superstitious, I would say, when you sneeze after you say something, it's because you're telling the truth. So Mr. McManus really doesn't care whether he sees you from today until hell freezes over.
Elizabeth McManus and her parents, Rich and Manon McManus, claim Elizabeth's ex-boyfriend, Gilbert Layell, owes for a loan to buy a car and unpaid rent.
Are you working now, Gilbert?
Yes, ma'am.
How did you get to work last week?
Another car that I own.
When did you sell the Camaro, Gilbert?
No, I didn't sell the Camaro yet. But
Where
I'm
is
going
it?
to. It's in my possession.
What kind of car did you buy, Gilbert?
Just another commute car, like a little Civic.
Why would you do that, Gilbert?
I planned on selling the Camaro, so I needed something that was a little less. The Camaro was giving me a lot of problems as far as...
Well, I hope that you sell it for at least $1,500, Gilbert.
I hope.
Because you owe the McManuses $1,500. I'm surprised at you, sir. I'm really surprised that you committed yourself to another car that you purchased and paid for while still having the old one and didn't have the good judgment and the moral compass to say, these people were nice to me, and I'm going to see to it that they get their money back. The $125 for rent, sir, that's your problem. Put your hand down. That's your problem. You offered, he accepted, you gave him $125. Don't do it again. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,500, which is the amount of money that you loaned him for the car. Now, as far as your personal property is concerned, Gilbert, you have photographs of the personal property that she destroyed?
No, I don't.
You have bills and receipts for the personal property she destroyed?
No, ma'am.
Well, I can't help you, sir. Thank you. That's all. Counterclaims dismissed.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I felt that I shouldn't have to pay $2,000 for a rock and a stone, especially to a pathological liar like he is.
The only thing I really cared about was my family things that were handed down to me.
What upset me was that he lied to them.
Well, after everything that was broken, I didn't really care.
He took advantage of me too. I could go on, but that'd take all day.
She just was upset that I did that.
I think she's come away a little wiser for it.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Plaster versus Deal. Step forward, please.
Homemaker Shirley Bonnie Plaster is suing her former friend, 25-year-old homemaker Tamara Deal, for unpaid child care fees. Tamara says Bonnie agreed to take her children so they wouldn't have to live in a gang-infested neighborhood.
Ms. Plaster, it is your claim that the defendant, who has 3 children, owes you for child care. Her children lived with you for a period of time. She gave you some money, but you still claim she owes you $1,500.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Deal says she owes you nothing because of one of 2 things. Either you waived any support during the mediation that you evidently had about something, and second, that there was never any agreement to pay you for taking care of her children. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Why was she taking care of your children?
I had some problems in the neighborhood that I was living in, and it was basically a bad community, and I had to do what was best and get my children out of there as soon as possible.
And how long did they all stay with you?
From June the 11th, Bradley stayed with me until March the 4th, and then the others from August and October until March the 4th.
Where were you living during all of this time?
I recently...
Richard, don't look down. Look at me.
I recently moved out of the apartment that I was moving in because of the community, and I went to stay in hotels. That's why I thought it was best that Bonnie helped me out and take care of my kids.
Who were you living in the hotels with?
Me and the father of my children.
You have a drug problem?
No, ma'am.
Did he?
No, ma'am.
So then why weren't you working?
We were working.
Well, 2 people working, it would seem to me you could have some sort of place for your children.
Right, at the time, you know, struggling trying to keep up the bill of the hotel and the gas to go back and forth to work and the money to eat on, it took us a long time to try to save the money up so that we could get on our feet.
You knew Miss Plaster through your mother, is that right?
Not only through my mother, but she took custody of my cousin when he was about 9 months old.
How old is he now?
16.
So she's a very good parent.
Yes.
What arrangements did you make to pay her for taking care of your children?
I gave her $150 a week, every week.
Is that right?
She was paying me $150, then she fell behind in November and stopped paying me.
How come?
Back in November, I lost my brother. I had to take some leave of absence from work, and when I went to go back to work in December, they asked me not to come back because I'd been off work for so long, so I wasn't getting a check every week. And then 2 weeks after that, my grandmother passed away as well.
Now what about the father of these children?
He was with me.
Why wasn't he giving her any money?
He wasn't bringing home much. You know, $200-300 a week is basically getting us by. I mean, it's $350 for a week of hotel.
If it's $350 a week for hotel, madam, you can find a small apartment for less than that.
No, not where we live.
Where do you live?
In Virginia.
Sure you
It's
can.
$1,200 a month for an apartment.
Yeah.
And when you're bringing home $300 a week, that's not making it much. It's
Well,
not
you
gonna
just
make a
told me it
rent
was
payment.
$350 a week for a hotel room.
Yeah, and we were struggling. And that's why I told Mrs. Plaster that when I got my taxes that I would give her some money because I didn't pay her in November when I lost my job.
So how much money did you give her?
$1,000.
And how much money do you owe her?
Nothing. After I gave her the $1,000, nothing was said until I was served with a court paper.
Ms. Plaster, I'll hear you.
She paid me $1,000 February the 12th, and I watched the kids from February the 12th to March the 4th when they took them out of there. She owed me $2,000 on February the 12th. She gave me $1,000.
So she owes you $1,600.
Right. But I rounded off to make it just even $1,500.
She said in November, I assume when you stopped working, you got behind.
Correct.
And you were behind $2,000. You gave her $1,000 at that time in February.
That's not right. I mean, a month, that's $600. Okay, that's what I, you know, if I owe her anything, that's what I should have been owing her. But I gave her the $1,000 in February because I didn't give her any money for December.
When you gave her the
$1,000
$1,000 in February, did you take your children home?
No, I took them home
Just a
in
second.
March.
So they stayed with her for another month, another 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Are they with you now?
Yes, they are.
Who else do you live with?
The father of my kids.
You have 3 children with this man. Is there any reason why you're not married to him?
The time isn't right. I mean...
Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,500. That's all. Thank you.
Parties are excused. You may step out. Now, this is case number 1 on the calendar in the matter of Abel versus Lemke. Parties have been sworn in. You may be seated. Ma'am, have a seat, please.
Miss Abel, you and Mr. Lemke were dating each other, and according to your complaint, you moved into a home that he purchased, and you paid him during the course of the 6 months that you lived there approximately $9,000. You claim that that was money that you want back now that the relationship is over because that money was really used to defray the cost of his mortgage.
Yes.
In addition, you claim that he has some personal property that belongs to you and a cat. Mr. Lemke says that the money that you paid to him was rent, that the cat belonged to him, that he had the cat prior to your moving in, and he has none of your personal property. What was the financial arrangement when you moved in, Miss Abel?
On May 7th in 2004, we discussed how I could help with expenses. Mr. Lemke brought up the fact that about $1,400 would be fair, and I offered another $100 just to call it an even $1,500 because 2 women, my daughter and myself, were moving in, and there's a lot of blow dryer and hot water used
Okay,
in
so
that
you
case.
agreed to pay him $1,500 a month?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and?
And then about May 24th, after I had moved in, we had become engaged, we had a discussion concerning my problem with the fact that I'm giving a lot of money to something that I won't get any return on. And why would I want to give $1,500 toward a mortgage that my name was not on? And Mr. Lemke said, well, I've been thinking about that, and here's what I've worked out. And I have the notes that he jotted down that day to explain to me how this money was actually an investment into his property.
Well, first tell me what he said to you.
He said that because his home appreciates $54,000 a year, over the past 10 years it had done that because it's lake property, that if you divide that number by 12 months and then again by 2 people, it comes out to about $2,200 a month in equity and investment money.
Yes.
And that is what he...
If your name was on the mortgage and if the house was titled in both of your names.
That part was left out. The fact that he
Well,
said...
I understand
Yes.
that, but I understand it's left out of your story.
Right, exactly. But he also mentioned on the same piece of paper in an email to the attorney that I'm willing to invest in his home and that upon sale of the home, I would receive the investment money back plus free equity. And that is also in the handwritten note that he gave me.
Let me see it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this note discusses a prenuptial agreement that the 2 of you were contemplating.
Correct.
And what he says is, Gail wants to enhance the aesthetic ambiance of my cabin and is willing to invest in it.
Mm-hmm.
Any proceeds over $775,000 would be shared in the event of a sale. Are you okay doing a prenup for both of us?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you sold the cabin?
No.
Well, your agreement was that when and if the house was sold, you would share in the profits and get your money back. The house hasn't been sold.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So, you can't change the agreement because you're no longer together. You could have just as easily worked out an agreement where you said, well, that's fine. If the house is sold, I get my money back, and if we don't get married, I get some of my money back. But you didn't do that. So you didn't get your money back. The house hasn't been sold. That's your agreement.
But it was a term of our engagement and marriage as I understood it, that money was investment.
You don't make an investment just because you understood it to be an investment.
Mm-hmm.
So you never came to an agreement with regard to that, according to this. Now, you're not suggesting that Mr. Lemke agreed to support you and your daughter.
Oh, not at all.
Good.
Not at all.
So that your $1,500 a month that you paid went for the roof over your head and your daughter's head, the electric that you say you used because you're 2 women that use more electricity for the heating or air conditioning or whatever else. $1,500 a month is reasonable. Get over it. Now let's get to the cat. Did you have the cat before?
Gail got the cat on her 40th birthday as a gift to herself, and shortly after I met her, gave me the cat.
When?
She said, we met February 3rd, and she gave me the cat February 20th.
Were you living together at the time?
No, she was living in her house. And she gave me the cat because the house was a total mess of animal feces and stink
Whose
in
house?
her house.
Yes.
And she had trouble with maintaining all the dogs and the cats in her house. So
How many dogs did she have?
I'm guessing 5 to 10.
Is that how many dogs you had?
I'm a breeder, Your Honor, and I had 5 dogs, yes, at the time.
How many cats?
2. And I would like to say that my house was not
Okay.
as he mentioned.
When did you move into his house?
May 15th, 2004.
All right, so between February and May, the cat was in his house?
No, Your Honor, no. I'm sorry. The cat did not leave my home until April. I had not decided to move in with him until April. And at that point, he asked if he could take the cat ahead of time because his daughters would get a kick out of it.
Okay. When did you move out of the house?
November 26, 2004.
And when you moved out of the house, did you take the cat with you?
No, I couldn't, Your Honor. I had to leave in a hurry because of abusive behavior.
Did you come back on the 27th for your cat? Just answer my question. Did you come back on the 27th for your cat?
Not for the cat, Your Honor. For possessions that I needed, my clothing and that sort of thing that I needed that I could take with me.
Good, but you didn't take your cat.
No, I could not.
Why could not?
He had told me that I must leave the dog and the cat there.
Fine. Did you come back with the police and say, this is my cat?
Yes, I did on February 28th.
Too late. Finished. Cat's his. If somebody took my dog, I guarantee you I would be there. I would file a lawsuit, not for my property, but if somebody took my dog and wouldn't let me have my dog, it wouldn't take me from November 26th to February to say,
Your Honor,
my pet is gone.
I had been asking him for the cat over and over
Asking him for the
again.
cat, listen to me, asking him for the cat is not what one does when one is missing one's valued, precious pet.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
The property that you claim he has that's yours are a soy sauce bottle, CDs, tape gun, painting supplies, and brush.
Yes, a growing list of things that I needed
I'm not
to
interested in your growing list. Get over it, Miss Abel.
And later today,
I read the answer about the flying pencil, but I want him to tell me himself how the pencil got on his chair. So we're going to start from turn around and look at me.
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Gail Abel says ex-boyfriend Tim Lemke owes for the return of money she invested in his home. Gail also claims Tim won't return her cat.
Go ahead.
I have email of all the times I requested amicably to get the cat back.
Starting before February?
Yes.
Show me
Absolutely before February. All right, this starts on January 16th. We had prior communication until
No,
that
just a
date.
second. So the first time from November is in January that you have proof of when you asked for the cat back. Is that what you're telling me? Let me
That's
see.
the proof, yes.
Let me see.
It starts at the top of the page.
Where's the cat now, Mr. Lemke?
The cat was loaned to a friend of mine to catch a mouse.
Where is the cat now?
Oh, my house. Excuse me.
That was my question.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you right. Apologize. He was loaned out for a very short amount of time, and she demanded I get the cat back and I could keep the cat as long as I kept the cat at my house. So she came back and verified, and that's in an email that the cat was there, and she said, okay.
Where is that?
It's in an email.
You have it?
Yeah, right here. And when she... Shh. Excuse me.
Well, this in January seems to indicate that you wanted to come to his house to verify that the cat was back in his house.
Yes, and I asked again, may I please take my cat back? And he said no, he wouldn't even let me near it. He had the cat missing for a month, Your Honor. That night he gave me 3 different stories as to where the cat was. First it was with an old lady having surgery.
Where are your dogs now?
The one that I kept is with me. The other dogs I placed in other homes because...
And what about the cat that you had?
I had the cat for 6 years.
Where's the cat?
Oh, the second cat?
Yes.
Oh, the second cat?
Yes, the cat.
The cat we're talking about.
No, your other cat. You said you had 5 dogs and 2 cats.
Right.
Where's the other cat?
Right. The other cat went home with Mr. Lemke's nephew and stayed with his brother. I have that cat back now. I'm very thankful to say.
So you have the cat back?
I have the other cat back, yes. But not this one. But in the top of that email that you see, he said, I will give you the cat back if it's that big of a deal. And I said, yes, it is that big of a deal.
Well, evidently it wasn't such a big deal because you waited 4 months to get it back. Now, what property? Are you telling me that the property that you claim he has that's yours are a soy sauce bottle?
Oh, sorry, Your Honor.
CDs, just a second. A soy sauce bottle, that's what you say in the email. CDs, a tape gun, painting supplies, brush, hand pail, rollers. This is what you say in an email.
Yes, as I discovered things were missing, Your Honor.
I'm not interested in as you discovered. Is this the email that you sent to him on January 19th? Soy sauce bottle, CDs, tape gun, painting supplies, and brush.
Yes, a growing list of things that I needed
I'm not
to get.
interested in your growing list. Get over it, Miss Abel. Listen to me very carefully. It didn't work out. Put your list down. It didn't work out. You paid rent for $1,500 a month for those 6 months that you lived there. Very reasonable, considering you are two people. You made that agreement, and the fact that it didn't work out, and you did not memorialize an agreement that was more specific with regard to the $1,500 that you were paying him, is your problem. You cannot visit that on courts. It didn't work out. Put a period, move on. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
All right, thank you.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I was naive, I was stupid, I made decisions too quickly, and I trusted someone who should not have been trusted.
The thing that was left out was when she moved in, there wasn't 5 dogs. There ended up being 12.
Extremely controlling. I was told how to breathe, how to stand, how fast I had to get pretty in the morning, and not to wear gray sweatshirts ever.
I'm not controlling.
That's who he is, and I just say the next girl needs to watch out.
She's a wonderful gal. It's too bad she left.
I'm glad it's over, and I do trust Judge Judy to make the right decision.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Macias versus Ayala, step forward, please.
Medical coder Alina Macias is suing the mother of her son's schoolmate, business owner Sandra Ayala, for the cost of her son's medical bills and pain and suffering. Alina says Sandra's boy injured her son with a pencil.
Step over there. No, you have...
Yeah, no.
Okay, you too.
What's your first name?
Nathaniel.
And yours?
Jonathan.
Nathaniel, you were injured in school.
Right.
With a pencil.
Yes.
You sat down, according to the complaint. You sat down on your chair, and you were stuck in the rear end with a pencil which lodged in your buttocks and had to be surgically removed. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And it is your claim that this young man was responsible.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I assume that you didn't see how the pencil got there. Because if you had seen how the pencil got there, you wouldn't have sat on it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So you didn't see how it got there?
No, ma'am.
So Jonathan here is going to tell me, because I read the answer about the flying pencil, but I want him to tell me himself how the pencil got on his chair. So we're going to start from turn around and look at me.
12-year-old Nathaniel Mancha says his classmate, 12-year-old Jonathan Ayala, stuck him with a pencil. Jonathan claims it was an accident.
How old are you?
12.
How do you do in school?
Good.
How is your conduct in school?
Good, too.
Never have any complaints by the teachers?
A little bit only.
Speak up.
A little bit only.
And when the teachers complain about you a little bit only, what do they complain about?
Like sometimes talking and then like a little bit slacking off.
Now, you know Nathaniel, right?
Mm-hmm.
How long has he been in your class?
This year only.
Do you like him?
Uh-huh.
Did you play together?
Uh-huh.
Do you remember the day that he was hurt with the pencil?
Uh-huh. Yes, ma'am.
Tell me how the pencil got on his chair.
Well, I was doing my work and like the pencil was like small, so I didn't want it anymore. So I wanted to throw it to the trash, and
It's just as the pencil was small.
Yes.
And you're sitting in your seat.
Uh-huh.
And you wanted to throw the pencil in the trash.
Yes.
Where was the trash?
Next to Nate's chair.
And how far away from Nate were you sitting?
At least like 2.5 feet.
So very close.
Uh-huh. But
So now you got this little pencil, and you wanted to throw it away, and the trash was right next to him.
yes, it was right next to his chair.
What were you going to use to complete your work?
Another pencil that I had on my desk, which was bigger.
So you had a little well on your desk where you could keep the pencils?
No, I always put my pencils next to my papers.
Do you have a book bag?
Yeah, in my backpack.
Where is your backpack?
I left it home that day.
What were you wearing to school?
My school emblem shirt and my jeans.
Your shirt have a pocket?
No.
Your jeans have a pocket?
Yeah, but they're tight.
You know you're pretty swift. You think that you're smarter than I am?
No.
You're not, Jonathan. Believe me, you're not. You know where I'm going with these questions?
Uh-huh.
Where do you think I'm going with these questions?
Trying to see if I'm telling the truth or not.
Yeah, trying to see if you could put the pencil someplace else rather than throw. What you're going to tell me is you threw the pencil into the trash. Or
No,
you
I
tried to throw it into the trash.
Yeah, I was going to.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And it landed straight up on Jonathan's chair. And he sat on it. Right?
I didn't land straight on the chair. It was going through the chair when he sat on it because he was...
It was in midair when he sat on it.
Yes, it was pointing up.
How do you got hurt?
Uh-huh.
Well, whose fault do you think that is?
Mine.
Right. Now we're getting somewhere. Why is it your fault?
Because I threw a pencil.
Because you threw the pencil. You had choices. Right?
Uh-huh.
You chose throwing the pencil. Right?
Right.
So whether you threw the pencil and he sat on it or you placed it on his chair as sort of a joke, it's your fault. Right? See, I knew we'd get somewhere. You got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Now you can sit down. I mean, Miss Ayala, quite frankly, you wrote the answer. You told me in the answer that this was nobody's fault. It was the pencil's fault. Oh, next to your mother. It's not the pencil's fault, it's his fault. He had choices. And at age 12, he has to understand that there are consequences to making the wrong choice. His choice was he could have held on to the pencil, he could have put it in his pocket, he could have placed it on the floor. He chose to throw it, according to him, which way out, but you know, not impossible. Certainly not his fault that he sat down on his chair, right?
Right.
So now your son understands that it's his fault and his responsibility that he got hurt. Do you understand that?
Yes, I understand.
Perfect. Good. Now can I see his medical bills?
Yes, ma'am.
What kind of treatment did you get?
They put me under.
Under anesthesia?
Yes. And I had to get the pencil surgically removed from my buttocks.
Did you have any stitches?
Yes.
How many stitches did you have?
1.
Were you uncomfortable for a while?
Yes.
What did Jonathan say after you sat on the pencil? Did he apologize?
No.
Has he ever apologized to you?
No.
Have you spoken to him since this happened?
Yes.
Are you back to being friends?
Yes.
Good. Did you apologize?
No, I never got a chance to.
Well, now's a chance.
Sorry, Nate, for throwing the pencil.
Certainly, Miss Ayala, you don't expect the plaintiff to bear any of the cost of treating her son. They had almost $600 in unreimbursed medical bills, and that you are responsible for. Because as between the two of you, he's innocent and he's not. Whether he did it as a joke or whether he did it because he was negligent or because he wasn't thinking. So you are responsible for those medical bills. Are these your only bills?
Yes, ma'am.
Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $600. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out. Yeah, this is case number 16 on the calendar in the matter of Redden versus Redden. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Ladies, have seats.
Ms. Redden, the defendant is your mother-in-law. Are you still married to her son?
Yes.
He's in the armed forces?
Navy.
How long has he been away?
He's been gone since December 6th.
According to your complaint, your mother-in-law owes you for rent and for other conduct that caused you loss of wages, harassment, whatever. Your mother-in-law says she lived with you for a brief period of time. She didn't stay there the entire month. She shouldn't have to pay rent. And she doesn't think that anything that she did rises to the level of harassment. Is that right, Mrs. Redden?
That's true, Your Honor.
All right. Your mother-in-law came to live with you when?
December 4th.
Why?
Because my husband was leaving for deployment and I don't drive. I also have 3 small children who I was going to need help with.
How old are they?
They're 3, 4, and soon to be 2.
Are these your only grandchildren?
Yes, they are, Your Honor.
So you asked your mother-in-law to come to do you a favor?
Pretty much.
Where was she coming from?
Oregon.
Is this your only child?
Yes, it is.
How long have you lived in Oregon, by the way?
40 years off and on.
So you were really relocating?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, what do you think she owes you for?
There was an agreement between her and my husband that was made over the phone that there was conversation back and forth that I was thinking about when she moved out to get a job for a second income.
And when he'd mentioned that to her, she said, no, I don't need to get a job, that she'd pay $700 when she moved every month for her to move in.
What kind of work do you do?
I'm disabled. I have a VA pension that I get monthly.
Go ahead.
So she agreed that it was going to be $700 a month.
I heard that.
That way I wasn't going to have to get a job, because for some reason she didn't approve of the fact that I wanted to get a job.
Right, that sounds perfect to me. I would rather you stay home and watch 2, 3, and 4-year-olds. Let you watch them. You made them. You watch them. Why should she watch them? She's already raised hers. Right? You have a lot of little children. A lot of little children could drive you crazy if you're with them 24/7. So it's nice to go out and get a job. You know, you're with adults all day and you leave somebody else to take care of your kids. Okay, so you agreed to give her $700 a month so she wouldn't go out to get a job and take care of her own children?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that sounds very nice.
Supposed to.
Shh. That sounds very nice of you so far. Relocating from a place you lived for 40 years to come and help your daughter-in-law because your son was going off to serve his country and you were coming to assist her.
Yes, ma'am.
So what happened?
She moved in December 4th. First few months, things were fine. Then in February, she had mentioned that SeaWorld out in San Diego was doing a job fair and that they were hiring. She brought it up to me stating, oh, I think you should try to do it. You know, it's a job, you know, I'll stay home, I'll watch the kids while you get this job. I went, I applied, got the job, and then we left for a weekend in Fresno because...
Who left?
All of us, my 3 kids, myself, and her, drove up to Fresno because my youngest sister was having a baby shower. Well, while we were in Fresno, things were perfectly fine. We come back from Fresno, I get the job, and then she starts, as soon as I start working, she starts getting attitude with me because I'm working and I'm not home all the time.
Just a second. You had disagreements with her over being out of the house during the day when you were supposed to be working?
The days that I was working, she started having problems with the fact that I was working long hours.
Oh, well, were you working long hours?
I was working between 5 and 8 hours a day.
Okay, and what was the original plan? How many hours were you supposed to work?
She didn't give me well, I'd only appreciate it if you worked this many hours a day. It was just,
But we're not talking about you going out socializing after work.
No, I'd go to work. She would drop me off at work. She would come pick me up from work, and we'd go home.
How far is the workplace from your home?
It's about a 10, 15-minute drive from my house.
Okay, and when she would come to pick you up, she'd come with the 3 children?
Yes.
So far, she sounds like a saint to me.
It may sound like she was a saint, but there wasn't. There were disagreements throughout the house.
I don't care whether there were disagreements or not. So far, she sounds like a saint to me. Go ahead, keep going.
So I started working. Deborah, who's my witness, was also working with me. She started the same exact day I started, and we were working pretty much the same hours. So I'd asked Donna if it was okay if we'd give Deborah a ride home, because Deborah lived about half an hour away from work, and she was taking the city bus to and from work, which is about a 2-hour ride. She didn't have a problem with that either. Well, then it started in conversation that Deborah was going to move in with me because she was having issues at home. She just wasn't getting along with her mother very well. Her father was also out on deployment in the Army. Well, Donna apparently took it into her head that the reason I was having Deborah move in was a ploy to get her to leave my house, which wasn't true because Deborah was actually moving in to help.
Deborah has children?
No.
So why wasn't she working more hours and you working less hours?
Because she's under 18, she's 17, and because of California laws, she can only work so many hours.
She's 17 years old, and she wasn't getting along in her house?
Correct.
Why wasn't she getting along in her house, do you think?
I don't know. That's between her and her parents.
Right. That didn't give you any cause to pause if a 17-year-old has to move out of her house because she's not getting along with her parents?
No, because I had issues with my parents.
So keep going. I'm still waiting for this lawsuit. I don't get a lawsuit. I get a saga, but not a lawsuit.
The evening of Easter Sunday, Deborah comes home. She sits me down. She's like,
she moved into the house yet?
She had.
And?
Deborah came home Sunday evening and told me that afternoon when Donna had picked Deborah up from work at about 4 o'clock, that both of my children, the boys, had both unbuckled their seatbelts in the car. and she was driving a little faster than she normally would and slammed on the brakes. Slammed on the brakes so hard that it sent my 4-year-old son flying into the middle console of my van and hurt his stomach. Well, we got into the car the next morning because she was taking me to work, and she'd made some snide remark towards my son about buckling in. And I'd asked her, I was like, what is this that I hear about the boys not being buckled in and that you'd hurt Connor's stomach? She's like, yeah, I did it.
When you came home, did Connor complain of a bad stomach?
No.
Keep going.
So she's like, yeah, I did it. She was like, I did it because I was teaching them a lesson that they didn't need to have their belts unbuckled. So she tells me that she'd stopped prior to this before and that she tried buckling them in and they wouldn't stay buckled up.
It's okay, so she made excuses. Keep going. Right. I'm waiting for the lawsuit, Miss Redden.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
You had to watch your own children that you made because she was in bed.
So that gives her the right to threaten my life with a gun?
I don't hear threatening.
Donna Redden owes for rent and for emotional distress. Veronica claims Donna threatened her life with a gun.
It's all very interesting, but you have to tell me what you're here for.
Well, the whole car incident was what led me to suing her because I'd come home early on the 29th from work. And in a binder that I have that has the bills that we have monthly, she had scribbled out what she was supposed to be paying me for the month and left some remark about how she wasn't an idiot and she wasn't going to pay me.
You mean she wasn't going to pay you the $700 a month?
Right, because she didn't feel that she needed to because she was taking care of the kids more and everything. But prior to that...
Just a second. Miss Redden, so this is what your lawsuit is about. Now we're getting there very swiftly. Your lawsuit is about she didn't pay you for the last month or so.
No, it was actually what I'm suing for is the first month she lived with us in December.
How many months did you work that she lived there?
I only worked a month.
Fine. And for that 1 month, had she paid you the $700?
No, because we'd made a prior agreement.
How many $700 payments did she make towards the house?
January and February.
And she left in March?
She left on the 30th of March, so the very end of March.
Shh. When did you get the job at SeaWorld?
The 26th of February is when I started orientation.
So you were working the month of March?
Yes.
Listen to me. If what you're telling me is that you came home and you saw her scratched out that she was going to give you $700 a month because she said that wasn't your arrangement. She wasn't going to watch your kids while you went to work.
No, that was the arrangement when I got the job. She agreed to watching the children.
Right, just a second.
Changed.
Just a second. She agreed to watch your children, Miss Redden, and not pay you rent.
It had nothing to do with the rent. She agreed.
Listen
because when I got the job.
Listen to me, my dear. Let's go back to the original conversation. Mrs. Redden, do I look like I need help from you?
No, ma'am.
I mean, she's got a lot of growing up to do.
I agree.
She's going to start today.
Thank you.
Your husband had, according to you, an agreement with his mother. His mother said, I don't want her to go out and get a job for a second income. I'll come, and so she doesn't get a job and stays home and watches her children. I'll put in $700 towards running of the household. Then she comes, relocates hundreds and hundreds of miles from a home that she's had for 40 years in order to assist you. Let me tell you what you just told me. She takes care of your children because you decide that you want a job. You want to go to SeaWorld. You want to be amongst people. You don't want to deal with 2-, 3-, and 4-year-old babies 24/7. That's the hardest job in the world, taking care of 3 little children. It's much easier to be amongst adults where you can meet other reputable people, like a 17-year-old who can't get along with her family. Right? So you go to SeaWorld, and because you don't drive, she puts your 3 children in the car, drives you to work. Then you meet Miss Yuckum over here. And you say, I don't want my friend to have to travel 2 hours by bus. Your mother-in-law says, fine, I'll pick her up or I'll drive her home so she doesn't have to take the bus 2 hours each way. Then, genius that you are, you say, I think I'm going to have her move in with me. I assume that you just met her at SeaWorld, so you know squat about her background. You don't know whether she's drug problem, an alcohol problem, a boyfriend problem, whether she steals, whether she's got a criminal history, you know nothing about her, you bring her into your house. And within a relatively short period of time, Miss Troublemaker causes a problem between you and your mother-in-law, and you've had months. You know, she drove you to your sister's house or to a baby shower. She does whatever you ask her to do. And she is rewarded for that by you suing her. Not only for rent, but for harassment, losing your job. Just a minute. Losing your job, damages due to mental distress. What mental distress did you have?
She threatened my life.
Tell me about that.
The night of the 29th, I'd come home from work with Deborah.
With Deborah?
Yes, because...
With Deborah. Go ahead.
We'd gotten into an argument about the scribbling that she put in my little binder thing. So I'd asked her about it. And she said that if I didn't agree with the $200 she was willing to pay, then she wasn't going to pay me anything. So I told her she either had to email my husband or she had to pack up and get out.
That was nice of you.
It's because we were having issues way prior to this.
What kind of issues were you having way prior to this?
She would make up excuses on her being sick and spend days in her bedroom. She'd go off.
You mean you'd have to watch your own children? Give her a tissue. You mean you'd have to watch your own children?
It had nothing to do with watching my own children.
Well, what if she decided to stay in bed? What does that have to do with you? What does that have to do with you if she decided...
Her agreement for moving in was so that she could help with the children.
So you had to watch your own children that you made because she was in bed.
So that gives her the right to threaten my life with a gun?
I don't hear you. I don't hear threatening.
She had walked up the stairs because she supposedly was going upstairs to pack. Her exact words as she was walking up the stairs was, "Do not come upstairs. I have a loaded .38 and I will use it."
So that gave you emotional distress?
That scared the crap out of me.
Just a second. That gave you emotional distress?
CPS was called because of this, and CPS threatened to take my children away.
Because of why?
Because I didn't drive.
You have anything you want to say to me?
Yes, ma'am. First of all, she was standing at the bottom of the stairs holding her youngest baby, 21-month-old daughter, in her arms with Deborah standing next to her, trying to pick a fist fight with me. And I said, "Ronnie, you don't want to mess with me." First of all, I was so mad, she would have left the house in an ambulance. I didn't want to do that because they'd have had me thrown in jail for assault. There would have been a restraining order against me. I didn't want that. I just wanted to pack my stuff and leave as soon as I could. And I said, and so I just said, turn around and started walking up the stairs, and I said, "And don't come upstairs because I got a loaded .38, and that's all I said.
Okay.
And the gun was not loaded. The bullets were locked away.
That's between you and the police department, whether you have a loaded .38 in your license. I don't want to know about it.
Okay.
That didn't cause her emotional distress. What caused her emotional distress is that she was going to have to take care of her own children.
I agree. I agree.
Now,
yes.
You want to tell me, is there anything you want to tell me about Child Protective Services?
I think the reason Child Protective Services came is because after things had quieted down, I walked across the street to 7-Eleven, and one of the police officers that had been at the house was over there. Well, I stressed to him the fact that I love those children dearly, and I hated to leave them in the predicament that they were going to be coming into, and that I was really afraid that they were not going to be taken care of the way children should be taken care of. And the next
as a result of that, they called Child Protective Services.
And the next morning, Child Protective Services was at the door.
Where are you now?
Oh, I'm back in Oregon now.
Okay. Have you been in touch with your son?
No, ma'am. I cannot email him.
Her son wants nothing to do with her.
Why did you leave your house at age 17?
I live in a house with 8 other women.
What do you mean 8 other women? You have a mother?
With my mom and my sisters and my grandmother and my sister's friend.
Yes.
It's just, I wanted to leave.
What do you do now?
I'm going to school.
Who supports you?
I support myself. I work at also.
Do you pay her rent?
Yes.
How much do you pay her?
I pay her $100.
Who watches the children?
We work opposite shifts. So I watch during her shifts and she takes care of them.
So you watch her 3 babies?
Yes.
Very good. Sit down. Yes.
I might also add that as far as I know, Deborah's boyfriend is now living with them in the home.
That sounds more right than anything else.
Yes.
That sounds like a reason one might not want to live with one's mother and grandmother.
Yes.
Deborah's boyfriend does not live with us. It's just the two of us at home.
How old is the boyfriend?
I have no idea. I've never met him, but when I left, supposedly he was on his way from Portland, Oregon, to come down and move in with them.
What's his name?
His name's Cody. But
Cody. How old is he?
19.
Does he go to school?
Yes.
Where?
He does internet classes right now. He's taking a course.
Please. Listen to me, Mrs. Redden. You have to keep your fingers crossed. There is nothing else you can do.
I pray.
That's what happens when babies make babies.
Yes, ma'am.
That's all. And when babies make not one baby, but 3 babies, that's a big problem.
Yes.
You keep your fingers crossed. You hope that God is watching over them. Your case is dismissed. Grow up!
Ma'am?
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Here.
Yana, this is number 39 on the calendar, the matter of Pugach versus Gunasegra. Really. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Gentlemen, have a seat.
Miss Pugach, what's your first name?
Sandra.
Mr. Gunasegra, your first name?
Surya.
How long had the two of you been dating?
We dated for about 2.5 years.
Did you live together?
No.
But it is your claim that while you were dating, you made a series of loans to him.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Gunasegra says there were no loans, just the give and take of a normal dating relationship, and he acknowledges that you laid out some money for him. He said that that's part of the dating relationship. Is that right, sir?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. When did you start dating?
We started dating in October of 2002.
And when was the first loan that you made to him?
In July of 2004.
What was it for?
It was for a trip. We went on a couple of trips after he got back from Europe after he graduated from college. And the first trip we made was with his parents to Canada. And when we would go out, I would pay. And he would always say, oh, when we get back and I get a job, I'll pay you back. And then we went to my hometown in Georgia, and I paid for the hotel, and we went out to dinner, and he said that he would pay for half of it when we got back, and he got a job.
Well, did he ever get a job?
No.
Huh?
No, Your Honor.
He never got a job?
Not until recently.
What's next?
In August, I went to Barcelona to study abroad for the semester, and I thought he was going to stay home and get a job so he could finally get the money to pay me back. And I would question him on if he's been applying to jobs. He would say he would go into interviews, so I figured he was on a line to get a job eventually, hopefully sooner than later.
Go ahead, Sandra. I'm listening for the rest of the loans.
Okay, so then he moved to Europe, and he eventually came to Barcelona, and I paid for his rent while he lived there, and I paid for his food, and anywhere we would go out, I would pay. And every time I would give him money, he would say, don't worry, you know, when we get back, I'll get a job. I promise I'll pay you back.
Keep going.
Then we finally came back to the States, and he was going to interviews quite often. He would say he got a job offer, but then wouldn't take it.
Keep going with the loans, my dear.
So in March of 2005, we took a trip to Las Vegas, and I paid for everything while we were there. And then I really just got tired of him not paying me back. We got back home.
You say in your complaint that he wanted $500 to gamble with.
Yes.
And you gave it to him.
I did.
Who are these two gentlemen over here?
This is my roommate, Danny McGee, and he was in Vegas with us. And then this is my friend, Devin, and he is a mutual friend of ours. He used to hang out with us. He would see me giving Surya money all the time and him promising to pay me back.
Well, I want to hear about the promise to pay you back. Raise your hand, please.
Sorry, my name's Danny. Danny McGee. I'm roommates with Sandy, and I went on a trip to Vegas with both of them. And there's been times in the past where she would give him money to gamble with the agreement that if he lost, she would take the loss, and if he won, that they'd split the winnings. And this trip to Vegas, she was hesitant to go because he didn't have any money. And we got out there, and I saw her $200 or $300 that he borrowed from her. And she said specifically at the time, I'm going to give you this money, and if you lose, you owe it to me. And he agreed and actually lost all the money. And since then, I know he's had 2 jobs and has made no effort to pay her back whatsoever.
You have anything to add to this case?
Yeah, I do, actually. Should I stand up?
Yes, you should.
Okay. Well,
Your name?
my name is Devin Stinson, and I've called him before in the past, and I've said, hey, let's go get some food or something. And he'd say, well, you got to call Sandy because I don't have any money. And then I'd call Sandy, and we'd all go out, and then what would wind up happening is he would order, and then after everything was over, he would say, well, I don't have any money, and he'd just expect it to be paid for.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ball's in your court.
Well, first off, let me say that the only reason I went to Europe was because I had a job. I had an internship with a software company, and I had that for a while, and it didn't end up working out. My plane ticket wasn't for 6 weeks later, so Sandy and I both agreed that it would be good to spend that 6 weeks together, because I was actually living in Switzerland at the time. And so I came down to Barcelona, and I did have some income through a rental property of mine. So I was making some type of money.
Surya, how old are you?
23.
Am I correct? According to your answer, you're in law school now?
No, not till August.
Where?
Thomas Jefferson or the University of Denver. I haven't chosen one.
What college did you graduate from?
University of Colorado.
And you?
I'm still in school at the University of Colorado.
Where do you get all this money from, Sandra?
I have 2 jobs that I work.
What 2 jobs do you work?
I am the assistant manager at a bowling alley at the school, and I work for the housing department at the university.
Who's paying your tuition?
My parents are.
Did they like him?
Sometimes, most of the time.
Well, I'm sure he can be charming.
You sure can.
When the first time you went out for dinner with him, and he said, I'm sorry, I left my wallet in my other car. I left my wallet in Switzerland. That should have been a clue. It sounds to me, based upon what this young man has testified to, that this was sort of a regular occurrence. You would go out for a meal, he would eat, and you would pay. Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Should have known better, Sandra. Who is this, by the way?
This is Ryan Watson. He's my roommate.
Does he have anything to contribute to this case?
Yeah. I'll let him explain.
I witnessed on many occasions Surya doing favors for Sandy, tutoring her and cleaning and making her dinner and things like that. And on some of those occasions, she would ask Surya to help her do those things, and Surya would say, no, not right now, I'm busy. But then she would say, Surya, you owe me so much money, using that against him, and he would end up doing that. So in both our opinions...
So you mean he was bartering domestic chores
right.
for the money he owed her?
Right.
And educational, Your Honor.
Syria, do you think that Sandra tutored you in some things?
As far as school?
Anything!
It's quite possible.
She didn't charge you for it, did she?
Emotionally, she charged me.
How did she... Come on, folks. Come on, behave. Let's behave. How did she charge you emotionally?
I had to put up with so much ridiculous nonsense.
Surya, that you don't have to put up with it. I don't want to hear it. You weren't tethered to a radiator, were you?
In a metaphorical sense.
No metaphorical sense. No metaphorical
Literally,
sense.
no.
You were in Switzerland. She was in Barcelona. Nobody got a magnet and attached it to you in Switzerland. You came down there by your
own recognizance.
You're not in law school yet. Let's stick to the English you understand, sir.
Okay.
You think you took advantage of her?
I don't.
You just think that she understood what she was getting herself into. She had the money at the time. You did not.
Right.
And she wanted to travel to Vegas. You said, I'll go with you, but I have no money.
Yeah, she understood
and she said,
that I had no
I got the money. You pay me back when you get a job.
No, the arrangement was she was going to cover all the expenses.
Why?
Why? Because they needed a third person to go. Danny and her weren't just going to go by themselves.
Why?
Because they needed motivation. And I was that motivation.
Sandra,
yes,
you schlepped around with him for 2 years.
Yes,
you let him take advantage of you for 2 years. So then what you do is you say, thank God, I figured out that this was not Mr. Right. Before I planned a wedding with him, I had a child with him, You can sit down now, roommate. I don't think you had a valid contract with him. I think you had the hopes and the dreams of a young lady who was in love. And I'm sure that there was a time when he felt mutually. But you're a giver, and he's a taker. Somehow in his own mind, he is entitled to take. Where are your parents?
In Santa Monica?
Did they indulge you?
Not really.
Sounds to me as if you've been indulged. Switzerland, Barcelona, working, not working, looking for just the right gig. Your girlfriend takes care of you. There's a sense, Surya, of entitlement. Shh, do not answer. Now it's my turn. Sandra may find you irresistible, I guarantee you, sir. I do not. So, Sandra, I wish in my heart I could say to you, you had a valid contract, which is the only thing that I'm here to address. You did not have a contract recognized in the law for him to pay you back. But I'm telling you, I think that you're lucky because you're a lovely looking, intelligent, hard-working young lady who should not hitch her star to somebody who has a sense of entitlement and who will just use you in one way or another for your whole life. Got it?
Yes, Your Honor.
Goodbye. Good luck.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Grow up.
She made her decision. That's fine. I hope Sandy has a great life, and I wish her well.
We were in a relationship, and when you're in a relationship, you do things together. You cook dinner and you clean.
They're about sharing and trust.
You help the other person out when they need help, and that's all part of a relationship.
And we loved each other.
I've learned to not just give out my money to people because I think I'm in love.
She gave up believing in me.
Obviously, it didn't work out for me this time, so I'll just keep my money in my pockets.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Grimm versus Bynum. Step forward, please.
Student Ingrid Grimm is suing the great-grandmother of her daughter's friend, Amy Bynum, for damage to their pocket bike. Ingrid says Amy's great-granddaughter, 9-year-old Michaela, wrecked it during a birthday party.
Miss Grimm, your daughter was having a birthday party. What birthday was she celebrating?
Actually, it was two of my daughters, my 11-year-old and my 13-year-old.
How many children did you have at the party?
There was approximately 20 to 25 children.
And Miss Bynum's granddaughter was one of those children, and you are her guardian, is that right?
Yes.
It is your claim that Miss Bynum's granddaughter rode a pocket bike. And it's a motorized bike, is that right?
Yes, gas.
And she damaged the bike. You want her grandmother to pay for it?
Yes.
Tell me how that happened.
Well, it was understood that the party...
Don't tell me what was understood. Just tell me what happened.
During the course of the party, we had allowed the children to ride. We have approximately 8 different bikes. And they were given certain rules that they had to follow in order to be able to ride the bikes. And Michaela did not follow those rules and therefore damaged the bike.
What rule didn't she follow?
Well, they were only supposed to go a certain distance, still within visual range of our house, which is approximately 8 to 9 houses, which is 1 block's length, turn around and come back. And then she was supposed to take turns.
And who was watching them at that time?
I was outside in the garage, and then my boyfriend, Rodney.
Well, who was watching Michaela? That's Michaela over there?
Yes.
Who was watching Michaela?
Everybody was, because the children...
No, not everybody. Were you watching her?
No, not at the time.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Miss Grimm, I'm going to ask you a couple of more questions. Okay. Then I'm going to end this torture.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Ingrid Grimm says 9-year-old Michaela Nash wrecked her twin daughter's pocket bike while riding it at their birthday party. Michaela's great-grandmother, Amy Bynum, says Ingrid allowed Michaela to ride the bike without her consent.
Michaela, I want you to stand up next to your grandma, okay? How did you know that Michaela had damaged the bike? Did somebody come and say Michaela fell off the bike?
Yes. It was about 5 children that had come and told us that.
Who did they come and tell?
They told both me and Rodney.
So that what you're telling me, Miss Grimm, is that neither you nor Rodney were watching Michaela. Is that correct?
Yes, we were.
You weren't. Because you just said to me, 5 children came and told me that Michaela had had an accident on the bike. And I said, who did they come and tell? And you said they came and told me and my boyfriend, which suggests to me that neither you nor your boyfriend was supervising the child when she was on the bike. Right?
Okay, you can say that, yes.
You see, you don't have to say anything yet. You're going to tell me what happened to the bike, Michaela, very fast. Tell me what happened to the bike.
I ran into the curb and then the bike and the tire wouldn't move.
Were you driving someplace where you weren't supposed to be driving?
No.
You were driving up the block?
Mm-hmm.
Had other children driven to the same location?
They drove a little farther.
Really? And who was watching you when you were driving?
Rodney.
Rodney. Where was he?
He was at the house.
Was he there when the other children were riding further than you rode?
Yes.
Were you hurt?
No.
Miss Grimm, I'm going to ask you a couple of more questions.
Okay.
Then I'm going to end this torture. Let us say, Michaela, who is driving a motorized bike in the street. The law permits you to do that?
Yes.
How fast do they go?
Anywhere from 15 to 20 miles, I think.
15 to 20 miles an hour?
Yes.
How old are you, Michaela?
9.
Miss Grimm, let us assume that, heaven forbid, Michaela had an accident on this bike and was injured. Do you think you would be liable for her injuries?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because she was at my party that I was supervising.
Correct. So why in the world would you think that her grandmother is responsible for the damage to the bike?
Because she did not follow the rules and she went further than where she was supposed to.
That was your responsibility to make sure that she didn't, not her grandmother's. When you invite children to your home to a birthday party, you become an insurer of their well-being. It is your responsibility to supervise them all the time that they're there. And if you elect to allow them to ride on a vehicle that can go 15 to 20 miles an hour, if there's an accident, you are 100% responsible. Did you tell her grandmother you were going to be allowing her to drive that bike?
All the parents were aware.
Were you made aware of that fact?
No, I was not.
I asked you whether you made Miss Bynum aware that you were going to allow her granddaughter to ride this bike.
All the parents were aware.
No, you can't answer the question, Miss Grimm, by saying to me all the parents were aware. You can't tell me what they were aware of when I ask you a simple question, which is, did you tell Miss Bynum that her granddaughter was going to be using a motorized vehicle?
I told all the parents of
When
the
did
children.
you tell Miss Bynum?
Well, when she dropped the children off.
What did you tell Miss Bynum?
I let them know that.
No. What did you tell Miss Bynum? What did you tell Miss Bynum when she dropped off Michaela?
Well, we introduced ourselves, and I thanked her for allowing her granddaughter to come to the birthday party. I let them know that what was...
Not you let them know. I want you to tell me what you said to Miss Bynum.
I don't recall.
Miss Bynum, is anything said to you about your granddaughter riding a motorized bike?
No. I would not have left her at the party if it was.
In any way, Miss Grimm, you are an insurer of the minor children left in your care and custody when you invite children to a birthday party. If they damage something in your home, it's your fault. If they hurt themselves when they damage something in your home, it's your fault. So you can't invite more children to a party than you're prepared to supervise properly, and I certainly would exercise better judgment than allowing a 9-year-old child to get on a motorized bike that's capable of going 20 miles an hour. Case is dismissed, that's all.
Parties are